We are live. Welcome, everybody. Happy Veterans Day. First off, special shout out to all the veterans out there. We have a verdict. I have been so nervous over the weekend. I'm sure everybody else has been. First, shout out to my wonderful mods and everybody that supports this channel. This is a long day coming, and I pray for the family right now. No matter what side you're on, prayers for the family, because this cannot be a good time. Oh, so let's jump in there, live at the courtroom. From what I understand, now, of course, just to give you a quick update, I just got back from the doctors. I just knew that if they came with the verdict, it would be today when I had my doctor's appointment. I was out having to rush to get my prescriptions, and it's like a 30-minute drive back, and yeah, it took me like 15 minutes, but don't tell the cops that. But yeah, we're here. Let's see what's going on. I understand approximately, so it's 2 p.m. there, so is it supposed to be in 30 minutes? Or an hour, 30 minutes. Verdict's announced at 3 p.m. Eastern, so it'll be announced in 43 minutes. Whew. Look at all those people out there. That is crazy. Thanks, Robert. Yeah, I think, in my opinion, just my opinion, I think this is a good sign for guilty. I was split on guilty or hung. I think a lot of us are, at least probably more pro-prosecution maybe, but yeah, I was a little worried that they probably had to sway a few jurors. In my opinion, if we just go off, and then we'll listen to what they're going to say real quick. In my opinion, if you go back and look at what the jury's questions were, like, I'd say like 70 or 80% of them were a good sign for the prosecution, in my opinion. Now, obviously, there's only so many people maybe asking questions and not the others, so, we can only judge off that. And then for them to come in on a Saturday, and if the rumor's true that they came in and listened to the voice, the video, and one of his, not his confessions, but one of his interrogations, that tells me that they were listening to match the voice. And they were probably trying to sway some jurors. Yeah. So to me, I think that's a good sign. Richard Allen isn't there. Yeah, let's see what they got to say. Good to see you, Gail, Kat, Rivy, Alan. I'll shut you guys out. Let's just see what they got to say, and I'll shut you guys out. Oops, hold on. All right, let's see what they say here. And then I'll shut you guys out here.
Good afternoon. I'm Anne Marie Tiernan, along with my
Let me know if you can hear that. I can boost it.
To my right and Emily Longnecker to my left. We are on verdict watch right now in downtown Delphi. We got news. How long ago would you say?
Can you guys hear that okay? I can boost it.
40 minutes ago that there had been a verdict in the case. Right now, we have seen some family members go back in the courthouse, but we haven't seen the suspect in this case, Richard Allen, yet, have we, Sam?
We have not. In fact, I just walked down the street because we can usually see when he's been escorted in from the Cass County Jail. We have not seen him arrive here yet.
Okay, so we are keeping an eye for that. We know that's about maybe a
3 p.m. should be
30-minute trip. We think that he probably
42 minutes, Tom.
Notice, but just imagine what that's like for him to be coming here and to know that.
But I'm sure it'll probably take some more time.
Forever changes how his life is.
Thank you, buddy, man.
Got a lot of people
been a huge supporter of the channel.
Who are closely watching this case. Kind of describe the scene a little
See
bit.
if you guys can hear it. Boost it. Okay, I'll boost it. Yeah, it seems a little.
Now this is the day 4 of deliberations.
Well,
we
I
go.
mean, most
That's
days,
better.
like we've seen throughout the trial, there are people camped out in front of the courthouse. Now, this is a little
It's not there yet. Okay.
extra extraordinary because people know word has spread that the verdict has come in. So you have people standing here waiting, phones ready, cameras ready, lots of media. I mean, it definitely speaks to the interest in this case, the great interest.
I'm not.
There are people from all over the country that are here and that we
have
seen here throughout the trial. Lots of different bloggers, and then you've had local folks, and you've seen that people sleeping out overnight just to see if they could possibly have a public spot inside that courtroom.
Jeez.
Because You
I don't envy
each
them at all.
family has had 10 seats. The media has had 12 seats, and the rest, about 24, give or take, each day, was open to the public. And so what you had was people standing in line, waiting outside this courthouse.
Oh, you're welcome.
Overnight.
Yeah, I got bad
just
hearing
to be able
too.
to get in line once the
Yeah, or
courthouse opened,
for those that
in
do.
the hopes of maybe getting a public seat, just to even hear a little bit of the testimony, whichever day it was.
Yes. So
Yeah, that's it.
Samantha,
Yeah,
you
no
were
worries,
one of
buddy.
our 3 staff members who was able to be in the courtroom at times. Kind of describe that room, describe that scene, what you have seen when you witnessed in being in there.
Got it.
One thing that always stands out to me is the consistency
Hey,
from
Leah.
day to day, and I say
Yes.
that in reference to the families. All of the families impacted by this. Of course, the families of Abigail Williams and Liberty German, but also the families of Richard Allen.
And,
typically, early on in the hearings, we would only see maybe Richard Allen's wife and his mom there, right? But this week, as this case draws to a close, we have seen rows full of family members for all 3 of the people impacted by this case. And I think it's important to mention, too, we've talked about the folks gathering here on the sidewalk, and really starting Friday morning when we thought we could have a true verdict in this case. Folks gathered and made 50-plus signs supporting Abby. And
what do you
Libby,
guys think of the
supporting
signs?
Richard Allen. We've seen signs for all sides of this case. I just walked back through, and people are already holding up those signs because they know a verdict could come really at any minute now, and they're ready. We're ready. We are just steps, of course, from the courthouse. Like we've mentioned, Bob Siegel is inside, and we know that at any minute we could know the verdict in this case. That's 7.5 years, almost 8 years.
Okay, give me 1 second, guys.
And
the wrong button.
as Emily's been talking about extensively in her reporting, that the family has said, this is the day, this is the day, this is the day, hoping that this would be the day. And now finally. This is the day. This is the day where we will know
One
what
way or
the
another.
jury has decided. Let's talk a little bit about that jury. They're from Allen County. There were 16 people who were originally selected to be on that panel. And then it was one alternate didn't return from lunch, and we're told on the 3rd day the only detail about that is it might have been something personal or family related. And so then we've had 15 jurors. The jurors, 15 remain, 8 women, 4 men, and
Of
3
course, thank you,
female
Kathy.
alternates. And they have been deliberating since they got that closing arguments that were made on Thursday. And they deliberated Thursday for about 2 hours before then resuming.
Yeah, what does anybody want to put in the chat? I know I could probably look it up. What we're at as far as how many hours they deliberated? I want to say they were like up to like 18 plus hours. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I got everything there. I'll keep playing that. I just want to show. Oh, I can't go back up. I closed something out, so I reopened the window. So all the comments that I had earlier, I can't see. I apologize. I wanted to shout everybody out from the top, but thank you guys, everybody, for tuning in. If you can't hit that like button, please be respectful no matter how you feel. And once this case is done, we're going to move right on to, and we'll get back to Delphi. I've got some huge things with Sebastian Rogers. Videos came out for Dylan Rounds. And then, of course, the search for Aiden Clune that I was involved in during the summer. We wanted to get cadaver dogs in there. They have done that. And so we will have some shows on those cases. But there's some crazy stuff in the Sebastian Rogers case if you guys don't know. So we'll probably do a show maybe tomorrow or Wednesday. We'll see.
Zooming on Friday and then coming back on Saturday.
Yeah, that's what I thought I
We added
heard,
up until
18.
about 1 o'clock today, about 19 and a half hours of deliberations. And they had a lot of things to go through when you add up all of the exhibits, all of the witnesses, all of the testimony.
No kidding, buddy.
And also the fact that it was contradictory. There
agree.
wasn't a lot of agreement about the cartridge, about the video, about the voice, about who was the bridge.
See, speaking of the voice, could you imagine if it was public? I think people would feel much differently. And it may sway people on either side. Maybe they're one way and then hear the evidence, especially those two things, and it may sway them to the other side. Either side don't matter. But I think if the evidence was out, I think it would be a whole different, division. There'll still be a division, of course, but I think it would be different. That's just my opinion, but we have all those experts that break down those interrogation videos and stuff, and some of the things that Richard Allen said, I don't know what an innocent person says would say, they show a picture of a bridge guy, and I'll go over that if we have a second. For those that really don't understand the context of why he came forward in an original, in the whole context of it. But here they show a picture of a bridge guy. Now, for Richard Allen didn't know is they just showed this picture, a bridge guy. They just said, we wanted to talk to this guy. They never said he was a suspect in the early days, very, very early days, first few days. We just wanted to talk to this guy. So anyway, skip years forward, his interrogation, October 13th. They ask him, is this you? And he's like, well, if the girls took it, then it's not me. And again, the
guy. Just not a lot of agreement there. And so that's really
so
what
sus.
This panel has been forced to process. Who did we believe?
Yeah, most people
What
get
seems to be
convicted
the
on
most
one
plausible
confession.
beyond a reasonable
Chris
doubt.
Watts.
And when you think about it, they have to come to a unanimous decision. This only happens. if
Yeah,
they all
I wanna
have
see the
a
interrogation
unanimous
videos.
decision. So
I wanna hear his
imagine 12
voice.
different people, 12 different experiences in life.
Yeah.
In life,
And
12
the
different perspectives,
other interviews
experiences,
as well,
expertise
criminal.
that they might bring to the table, and they all have been sitting in a room together.
Oh, thank you, Chester's
discussing
mom.
discussing 387 exhibits, the testimony of 64 witnesses. They took.
Okay, so we're really kind of going off stuff, that we already kind of know. So I'm sorry if I'm kind of pausing that. But one thing people got to understand with my situation is I've worked with victims' families. Now, that doesn't make me better than any other YouTube. That just kind of puts me in a certain niche that I could say, I have a little bit of experience working with victims' families. And I know how tough it is. And I know, especially with those that are familiar with the Dylan Rounds case, what people can do to flip the script and get out there. And people were attacking the family. A certain somebody came around, somebody spread a rumor, and then this one guy took off with it and then was going after the family. It's like, what in the world? Like, where's your head at? Like, how can you go after these people? Clearly they had nothing to do with it, but they didn't like the narrative because it didn't fit their narrative. And so they go after the families. And I could never do that. I got to sleep at night myself. And I'm not going to let my chat be filled with, see, and this is the thing that's pissed me off, is it's okay to, if you want to provide arguments for the defense, but if you're going to put it out, like, there's certain channels that have been out there, Faults and Confession, that's not the real channel, but maybe you guys get the hint. And if you got to really put truth and facts and transparency, like in your title or up here somewhere, yeah, we're telling the truth, then, isn't it funny that usually it's not the case and it's the other way around? That's just my experience. But anyway, yeah. So again, I've worked with victims' families, and it's just like, there's no way I could betray these, And of course, I've covered this case. Like, we were looking at all these suspects long before these people came around. But anyway, what I was going to say is about these channels, and I'm not saying all of them, but some of these defense channels, some of them, they let people run wild in the comment section with false facts. And they're like, oh, and they jump on it. And they don't say anything. Oh, hey, we believe in the defense, but, that's not right. That's not true. But they don't care. And so the reason why in this chat, we always try to, tell you guys to say, in my opinion, that is why. Because we don't want, any false information out there.
Copious notes, many of them during the trial. We saw them taking a lot of notes. They would come in every day with thick binders, but they had to, in these deliberations, they could refer to the notes, but they also
Brenda,
had to
exactly.
just go from
Yeah,
memory
I mean,
and their notes.
yep.
They weren't allowed to see transcripts of what people talked
Thank you,
about during
Peyton.
the
God bless you.
testimony. So it was all their memory and all their notes.
Which is really interesting because I remember in
Thank
some
you,
of
Amy.
your original reporting, Emily, that you were talking about there were some people that were coming in with binders.
Let me skip forward
you
real
could
quick.
tell they had
I
taken
mean, these guys are just really regurgitating stuff we already know. Let's go back to live here. Okay. I might switch it here in a minute. See, we'll pull up Twitter. Oh, actually, I got to pull up Twitter on a separate monitor because there's sick individuals out there. So I see a lot of people saying verdicts could be read at 3 p.m. So that's in a half hour. I'm assuming, the process of it. So maybe it will take, maybe between 30 minutes to an hour until we actually hear something, just because they have to go through the process. I'm gonna close that. I don't want to leave it. Oh, that's loud. Turn that down. Been so busy, I missed it. There's a lot of crazy stuff, and I've spoken with my sources that are connected to that case, and whoa, it's taken a wild turn in the Sebastian Rogers case. Again, I don't want to get too off topic, but there's some suggestions. Again, we don't know until, obviously they find him or whatever, or there's evidence, but there's rumors going around that he was trafficked. Now, I don't know. That's just a rumor. But I have had some of the sources come out, and they have been contacted by people that have a little bit of information, allegedly, of course. And so, again, once this is over, we'll, with the Rogers case, we'll kind of jump into that. And then Dylan Rounds, because I've got, for those that have been with me a long time know that I was searching for him, and that chapter, who I love, Mike from that chapter, shout out to him, one of the guys that inspired me to become a YouTuber. And who, another shout out real quick before I get on with what I was going to say, shout out to, who really needs a shout out is Captain Howdy. To me, he's the captain, and that's when I first started getting into the Delphi. First videos I saw was of Captain. And that's for those that know, please show some love to the captain. Like, I think he deserves so much credit. He was covering this case so long ago, doing amazing videos, trying to be, kind of in the middle. Of course, that, when he was making videos, for the most part, we didn't have a Richard Allen, but he had some really amazing videos. And I know there's more people to shout out, but again, that chapter, Iwu Crew, which unfortunately now they, it used to be the family. Now they do interrogation videos. But anyway, they inspired me to become a YouTuber. Those channels, and I'm not trying to suck up to any of them, but yeah, especially Captain Howdy. Even though he wasn't really a big YouTuber, but man, like I remember when it used to be called the Snapchat murders. For those that are OGs to this case, I mean, that's what they called it for a long time. The one thing I was worried about, and if this does come out as guilty, I don't blame a lot of these people that feel not guilty. Honestly, I blame some of these people that are putting out misinformation, just in my opinion. Now, not always saying it's the creator. I just see stuff in the chat, and I'm like, you got a guy here sitting there saying, there's no metadata to the BG video. And I'm like, well, if that's true, why didn't the defense bring that up? Because the defense never brought that up, so then you're calling the defense liars, because they didn't argue that thing is fake. Don't you think if that was, fake, that they would argue that and say, hey, there's no metadata? Like, I know, for those that know Iwu Crew, oh my God, do you guys remember with the family? I don't know if they're based out here in Utah, or they're definitely out here in the western area, because they would go to like Nevada, places here in Utah, because we got tons of ghost towns. They went to the Polygamist, had some really cool interviews. Yeah, I miss them. God, what an amazing family. Whoa. They're screaming. What's going on? They're screaming. Guilty? They're screaming? Guilty? Is it guilty? Is it guilty, guys? They're screaming guilty. Guilty on all counts? Oh my God. No way. Guilty on all accounts. Oh my God. Bless God. Oh.
I gotta give you a hug, sweetheart. No.
Oh, thank God. Oh, thank God. Dude, oh my God, man. Yes. Oh my God, dude. All these families. Oh, it hurts. Oh, it's so amazing. It's amazing. God bless them. I feel bad for all families, of course. You know, most of them are roped in this because one monster. You know. Thank you so much, man. I meant to email you back. I'm sorry. It's been hectic, man. But I appreciate the support. God bless you. Thank you so much, buddy. For those that know, man, I put my heart and soul into this case. So many, not so many. Oh, there's Kathy Allen. Oh, is that? That's not Kathy. Kathy's behind him. Who's that? Does anybody know who that is? Is that like the sister of Kathy? I think that's. Oh, is that Richard Allen's half sister? Maybe. Again, I. Oh God. Oh. Justice was served. Thank God for Libby, man. Thank God for Libby. And Abby, of course. Thank you so much, Tom. You guys are amazing. God bless you guys, man. I was never going to sell my soul to put out false information. I cannot do that to victims' families. I just can't. Oh, sorry, Nightbot's going nuts. I'm sorry. I don't know why Nightbot does that. Sorry, guys, for sharing your emotions. I don't know why Nightbot is doing that. Yeah, well done, jury. Yeah, at the end of the day, for those that may think he's innocent, you know, maybe wait until you actually see all the evidence like they did. That's what I would have to say. I was really worried, and this is something I really wanted to say. I got really worried after the first week. I started noticing all the channels, except for Nancy Grace, lover or hater, all the channels, even the local news, they would go over the facts or, you know, the details of the day, and then they would usually have a defense on. And I got worried because every time after each day, they would have another, the same defense gal, you know, nothing wrong with her, but they weren't, you know, it wasn't even. It was always defense. And then, of course, one of the most top YouTube creators that were, you know, covering this channel at the time, you know, nothing against her, but obviously pro-defense, and yeah, so I got really worried because you could tell all the national media was Court TV, and I've really lost respect, even though I love Vinnie Politan, man, but again, you know, I don't want to hold any grudges. They did what they needed to do. But yeah, I got worried. It was only Nancy Grace. If you look at it, it was only Nancy Grace that was really had you know, and of course they were pro-prosecution, which I didn't mind because it was like all else I'm seeing is all defense. You know, occasionally maybe a prosecutor, but it was mainly defense, and I was getting worried about that because then, of course, people that come in that are not familiar with this case are going to be fed, and you know, then of course, you know, it's kind of like the, you know, who's the bigger side, who's, you know, where's the group trending towards, and am I going to, you know, feel out of place if I'm, you know, my opinion is opposite with what feels like majority. But again, it comes down to those jurors. They saw the evidence, we didn't, and they did what they needed to do. It was on all counts. Thank you so much, Emo man. Good to see you. I hope you're having a good day, buddy. Love you as well. Love everybody. I appreciate you, bud. Thank you so much, Luna. God bless you. Thank you so much, Sarah. Oh, I know. I gotta stay composed. I'll probably break down after this live because I'm still kind of in shock. Oh, that stream's loud. Ooh, I'm waiting for them to kind of report here. Wow, that's still loud when I turn it down. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Vippo. Yeah, thank you, God. Oh, thank you so much, Dorsey. You guys are amazing. Again, and it sucks. I've lost a lot of viewers. I wouldn't say a lot, but I've lost viewers because of this. You know, and I hate it. You know, it sucks because, you know, this is just one case and we're covering other cases and, you know, I want to help people. But again, you know, I've worked with victims' families. I can't, you know, the families believe that Richard Allen's guilty. We've been covering this case way so long and just knew the second he came forward, the timeline, it was basically like, for those that think he's not guilty, then you're just saying Richard Allen is a liar, basically, because, you know, really, Allen told us the truth the entire way. You know, he just tried to change a few things, but, yeah. Tom N., today is the day. Doug Carter's voice. God, I would love to see his reaction, man. I have such the utmost respect for that guy. That guy, for those that don't really know Doug Carter, obviously I've never met him in person, but there's tons of interviews with him, podcasts. You know, obviously the infamous one we've seen is him, you know, talking about the killer. And in my opinion, that press conference will go down in history as like a locker room, like holy shit moment that will just go down. You know, one of those Sheriff Grady speeches or whatever. But you could tell Doug Carter took this seriously. And this was something that he wanted to finish up before he was done. And God bless him. God bless him. Thank you, Tom. God. Oh, Dorky Disney, I know. Oh, they finished up. What? No update? Like, they're just packing out. We're out. They didn't even say anything, did they? Except for guilty on all accounts? Did they even, like... Why do I get the feeling if it was the other way around, they'd be doing these interviews and stuff? Again, I was not happy with the local news. Like, they were really kind of pro-defense. I don't want to say, like, pro-defense, but, like, they would go over the stuff from the day, you know, because they had their, you know, the people in there. And then they had this lady on, and nothing against her. You know, she was a former prosecutor, now, you know, original prosecutor, and then a defense attorney. And I hate to see that. I really, you know, there's nothing to, you know, want to gloat. I do want to see the family celebrate because God bless them. God bless them. Gail, God bless you for all your support on this channel. John, yeah, it is. It is. I think, Knitting with Betty, Chris, you're making me. Oh well, I know. I almost cried, but I had to I'll start bawling. I'm a baby. I've seen these families. I've been with them. Searching for their children's bodies, and it's just, oh my God. I mean, because with the Dylan Rounds case and with Aiden Clune, I would be the mothers who are looking for their sons. Dylan Rounds, he was actually murdered, but we'd find bones, and it's like, oh God, and it's just gut-wrenching. I mean, it takes a mental toll on me. I had to take like a week off after I came back from one of them because I was just mentally checked out. I mean, mentally and physically checked out, but I'm just kind of surprised they didn't, have kind of a report there. But yeah, it sucks. I've lost viewers because of this, and it's a shame. Because I don't want to. Again, I'm not perfect. I get things wrong, but I don't want to feed my chat with misinformation. Whoa, what happened here? Chat. Mic check, mic check. I might need to plug in my cord here. I might need to get a new router. Okay, I'm sorry, guys, that train.
Richard Allen, not a single one of those witnesses.
See, this girl, and again, nothing against her, but you would see her on every day. This is her local news, and it's like, okay, it would make sense if you had like a defense and then a prosecution to kind of argue both sides, but I noticed that every day they would do the debriefs because, I knew there would be more information because there's no transcripts, no cameras in the courtroom. So, and those blogs clearly had, some things wrong and mistakes in them. And of course, they couldn't write down every single word. But then, of course, we'd get a lot more because I think they probably collabed and then just kind of went over it the day before. But they'd have her on, and I'm like, man, this doesn't look good. And then, you see more and more defense attorneys coming around and, hey, nothing against them. They're using their expertise to show what they feel. But then you have other channels that really just let the false information just run through. And it's like, come on, guys. Wait, does it say they went live again? Oh, no. Let's see.
We have some breaking news to share. The verdict is now in for the Delphi.
Here we go. Let's see.
Now it's day 4 of jury deliberations in the Delphi.
We have some breaking news to share. The verdict is now in for the Delphi.
And it was something that I certainly will take away.
Yeah, what happened in the courtroom?
I mean, I will say, for the most part, I think exhaustion is the word.
Yeah. The fact of the matter is this was a long trial with a lot of expert testimony that is very, very complicated. So it's really not too surprising that this jury wanted to take the time to go through all of that and make sure they got it right.
Now, on Saturday, the jury wanted to look at more evidence. What is your take on
that was a good sign
for today's verdict?
I think when you're seeing a jury request pieces of evidence to review again, in this case videos involving law enforcement, speaking with Richard Allen, I think you can look into that in a number of ways, but I think generally it's like they want to kind of get that again.
You too, Jim.
Because
have a good day, buddy.
In this case, did they want to see like how he was denying committing the crimes? Did they want to hear his voice again? It can kind of go a number of ways.
Now, a lot of people here in the line, everybody's got an opinion, but they were interpreting the long deliberation as this could end up as a hung jury. That doesn't appear to be the case. So does the length of the deliberation, was it more or less likely that it would be a not guilty verdict versus a guilty verdict based on the length of the deliberation?
Well, for me, the real telltale sign of a hung jury is if the jury sends a message to the judge saying, we're having trouble, or they're asking the judge a lot of questions, indicating that there's some disagreement. and none of that happened. So again, I think the real reason this one took so long was because there was just so much material to go through, and frankly, it was complicated material.
Now, you guys were in the courtroom for the trial. I mean, you navigated the line, you got in there. Where do you think the turning point was, and when did you start to see jurors start to be convinced one way or another?
I don't know. This was quite a stony-faced jury. I will say this. I felt like they asked hard questions of both sides. They were not letting these prosecutors...
Got like some like bass. Hope you don't hear that. Some neighbor downstairs or something. But yeah, that's the thing that made me feel good is the questions. Most of them, I feel like there's a few at the end that were kind of maybe looked towards defense. But if you look back at the questions they asked, like I said, like 70-80% of them were definitely, in my opinion, showed where at least some people sat as far as, guilty, not guilty. So I think it probably was, who knows what the numbers are. Clearly there must have been a majority of guilty, and then they needed to persuade, for, whatever, the lesser amount of not guilties, or maybe they're just still in the middle. And I think they needed to sway them. And I'm sure looking at that evidence, listening to his voice, again, I really wish some of this evidence, not all of it, of course, some of this evidence was out, because I think for us as a public to actually hear his voice, because that was one thing, never heard him speak. If you're an innocent man, look at Karen Reed. Now, I know it's a different situation. She wasn't actually incarcerated, really. So she was doing interviews, but I doubt we would see that, because obviously they didn't want people matching his voice.
Prosecutors or these defense attorneys off the hook without asking a lot of very pointed, very interesting questions, and that just showed me that they were paying attention. So no matter which way they go, I think we can feel assured that this jury was definitely on it.
Were they skeptical of either side in some of the evidence?
No interviews.
From the prosecution or the defense?
I felt that their questions indicated they were actually at times skeptical of
train.
both sides.
It's got bad timing.
Really wanting to examine this and not take anything for granted just because an attorney was saying it.
Is there one particular piece of evidence, one particular storyline, narrative, timeline, if you will, from either the prosecution or the defense that you think this case hinges on?
I think personally that the van that was brought out in one of Richard Allen's detailed confessions was a problem for.
And I agree. The van thing, so for anybody that, now again, I was not there, so only people that there could really, can testify to this, but, it seemed like it was pretty split in the middle as far as people that were getting in, some pro-prosecution, some pro-defense, but I noticed when that van came out, and I could tell they were not happy with that, and come to find out, right after that, more people pro-defense start showing up, and according to their story, again, there's two sides to every story, and maybe the truth in between, but she said that there was a lot more people that were pro-defense and that were bringing their friends, and that allegedly they were trying to sneak a few extra people into the line, because how, if you guys were familiar with how the line worked, which I think was, just ridiculous in the first place. So, okay. I don't know why I got a call from AutoZone. That's
for him. That was my big takeaway.
And sorry, my photographer Kevin Stinson just mentioned that he thinks he's seeing that the jury is leaving.
Whoa.
So what does that mean?
That would seem to indicate that the hearing is over and that a verdict has been delivered, and I would imagine we would find out what that verdict is very soon.
Okay, so this is behind.
See it kind of underlined and circled. Exasperated is the word. Exhausted. Judge Gold said many times, "You all must be exhausted." She said that even right before and
okay,
right
I'm going to back up because I want to
read,
see what because she was in there.
Leland kind of fall into his hands. It's been 8 years since the girls died, and something that he has personally made made his mission here as a prosecutor. So.
Okay, yeah, so I want to touch on something.
One more question, Cody, then I want to bring Mario back in, okay? So one more question with Kyla. I'll bring Mario back in. You guys sit tight. Go ahead. One more question to Kyla.
Just one.
Yeah, so Kyla, we have one more question.
Yeah, they were not happy with the
van.
van.
A couple of times. Can you give me a sense that they are just tired? Everybody associated with this case is just tired, and they're glad it's over.
Yes, Cody, here's the biggest thing on my notes, and you'll see it kind of underlined and circled. Exasperated is the word exhausted. Judge Gold said many times, you all must be exhausted. She said that even right before and right after she read the verdict, and it's certainly something that I think is a theme for both the defense and the prosecution, and of course, the jury.
Hey, Louise,
right,
good
Kyla,
to see you,
sweetheart.
sweetheart.
Phil, I'll send it back to you there in the studio.
Okay, hey guys, sit tight. We'll get back to you momentarily, okay? We'll bring Mario Masalamani.
I am curious to know what Richard Allen, what's his, reaction. I would love to know because, again, in my opinion, and of course, according to the jurors, we got to respect that. He's the man.
Back in again.
So I would like to see, what this monster, some people feel bad because he was put in this different situation. And people have blown it out of proportion, saying it's solitary confinement, like he's in the hole, but he wasn't. He was a safekeeper. He had the opportunity to have a TV in his room, and he had more interaction. As a matter of fact, one of the phone calls I heard, and just one of them, but I'm assuming there's a majority. So for anybody, I've never experienced this, but anybody's heard how a phone call works. First it's a pre-recording. First the jail talks, and then it says, you got an incoming call by inmate's number, and Richard Allen says his name. So when he's saying his name, obviously it's being recorded. Well, what's interesting is you can hear all this background, like if inmates, because remember he had interactions every day, despite what people think or some. Were led to believe, but I thought that was so interesting. I didn't know that, so that's why I'm like, I would love to hear these calls because it sounds like there was a lot of commotion going on.
Again, a noted defense attorney. He's been with us throughout the trial. You know him well from our All Indiana Politics show.
Today is a great day.
He knows this stuff very well. Mario, are you surprised by this guilty verdict?
I think with the fact that he confessed numerous times, I think the jury deliberated for a long time. That shows that they took this case extremely seriously. But the confession was probably what did it in for the defense. Before the confession, I think that there was a good chance that they could find that there was a reasonable doubt. But with the confession, along with all the other evidence that the state provided, I think that the jury came to the logical conclusion that Richard Allen was guilty of all counts.
Okay, so what happens now, Mario?
Oh, he sat emotionless.
So what the judge will do is she will set.
Oh, look at these people reacting. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy for him. Frank Meister, shout out to everybody that, like I said, in my opinion, reported the facts. I know a lot of them will be pro-prosecution. But again, I'm not going to betray my viewers by feeding you guys misinformation. I can't do that to myself, to you guys.
What's called a sentencing date. And by sending that sentencing date, she will order what's called a pre-sentence investigation, a PSI. So you'll probably hear about a PSI over the next couple of days because in the span of the next month, the probation office will interview Richard Allen, will also collect information on his education, any sort of substance abuse, his family background, any sort of criminal history, and compile a packet for the judge to learn as much as she can about Richard Allen prior to her sentencing him. She's got a range in which she can sentence him, and so what the purpose of this PSI or the pre-sentence investigation will be allowing the judge a better opportunity to understand Richard Allen and to determine what type of sentence to be given.
So some interesting things. I just want to pause here so I'm not stealing their clips and stuff. Interesting thing. So what's considered direct evidence and what's considered circumstantial? Well, you might be surprised that DNA is actually considered circumstantial evidence. And you know what it's called? You know what is direct evidence? Confessions. Now, again, I'm sure maybe there's some where he may be loopy or something. That's why I think release all the calls. Let the public decide, again, the jury has done their job. But, there'll be a time maybe the evidence comes out and people, can come up with their own conclusions. But I really think it's going to probably sway people more to Richard Allen.
During that 30 to 45 days, so usually a judge will ask, are you willing to waive the 30 days? So a defendant has the ability in Indiana to be sentenced within 30 days.
Thank you, Leslie and Billy.
Usually a defendant will waive that 30 days. So that way they can try and compile information, that being witnesses, Richard Allen's wife, daughter, family members, possibly priest or pastor, compile that information for that sentencing date so that way they can present the best face of Richard Allen. Also, the prosecution now has that time in which they will get statements from the family, potentially have family members testify as to the loss of those two girls, what that meant to their lives, what that meant to the community, and they will present that to the judge also. So
I would love to hear the victim impact statements. That's one thing we'll definitely need to cover as well, because, they've been waiting for that for a long time. I mean, they got the big thing is over with, but that impact statement, that I'm sure they've been probably thinking about for way too long.
Sure. And Kyla Russell. Cody, what is it like out there now?
I would say that actually the energy is starting to
thank you,
die
Just
down,
Joe.
In a lot of ways. People who have been out here in the line
again,
for,
God bless you guys.
Weeks at this point are actually starting to leave. Now we do know that there's basically going to be a
see you, Cunningham. I hope you're happy.
Of the courthouse from where we are
this
right
is
now.
exciting.
But, Kyle, am I right? Where the energy around here is starting now that they've had that release and excitement and the cheering when you came out and said that they was guilty. Now it's almost like people are going right about their day.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, I mean, these people.
And I think, and this is just my opinion, I don't know, but I'm sure a lot of them are probably the not guilty, and of course, obviously you can't blame them. They, the evidence that they thought was presented, that they heard, through third party, obviously, again, they just didn't have all the evidence like the jury did. None of us except for that jury had the complete evidence, and it just drove me nuts. Again, we'll talk about it here. I would love to hear more about the reaction in the court.
Here for weeks. I mean, we started jury selection October 14th, and a lot of them have been there since then. I think as those words came out of my mouth, I came down the stairs, many of them felt, okay, our job here is done, and we're free to leave. So I would say many of them seem to be relieved. Exhausted and relieved would be the two words I would put to that.
Thank you, Cindy.
There's a very
Sydney. I'm sorry, it's Sydney.
Sign, but I don't think that we can see it unless Kyle were to take the camera off the tripod. But it just says, "Today is the day. Justice for Abby and Libby. Bless a stranger with a."
Those signs, man. I'm sorry. Those signs were so inappropriate. I mean, I get freedom of speech. I totally understand that, but I feel like there was a few signs that were just absolutely disgusting. And then the thing that really just, in my opinion, really upset me is the fact that these defense people, just some of them, not all of them, of course, but there's certain individuals that, they lined up all their YouTube channels, and it's all pro-defense, claiming, oh, we want justice for Abby and Libby. Oh, by the way, we got people in chat. Yeah, Kelsey, go look at her. She's sketchy. To throw the family members, it's so disgusting.
A random act of kindness. Tell them it's in honor of Abby and Libby. Sign and leave a kind word for families. Anna and Becky will both receive one. And it's got a picture.
It has. God bless you, Jocelyn.
Exactly
Sensei, good to see you, sweetheart.
Of that. And presumably this was for the families to see as they came out.
No worries, Amy. God bless you.
That's the type of vibe that's out here right now, Phil.
Any update on when we'll be hearing from anyone in regards to the press conference, guys?
Thanks, Fire
I
Fury.
will say, I mean, I see several people starting to gather. They certainly didn't indicate. I talked to both Anna Williams before she walked in. She knew that she had gotten a call that there was a verdict. She said they would speak shortly after. I'm not entirely sure what shortly after means. Of course, this is a day that they've been waiting for
did they say they would
nearly
speak?
8 years. Becky Patty also said they certainly didn't indicate. I talked to both Anna Williams before she walked in. She knew that she had gotten a call that there was a verdict. She said they would speak shortly after. I'm not entirely sure what shortly after.
If anybody knows if there's an interview, we'll look for it after this. Yeah, I would love to hear the family. Oh my gosh!
For nearly 8 years.
I'll probably break up. I'll have to turn my camera off.
Indication on exactly when, but as soon as they kind of come down those stairs, right now they're embracing each other. We'll bring you that.
Kyla, tell us about your experience inside the courtroom.
Yes.
I think you can hear me now. So you've been in there every single day for 4 weeks. Tell us what that's been like. Obviously,
what happened
you've
today?
Done a fantastic job reporting on this. Tell us what that has been like for you personally.
I want to know who was in there today.
Yeah, I would say something like this is, you understand the gravity of it. You understand that 2 girls' lives were lost far too soon. And that was something that was really present and palpable in the courtroom every single day, whether it be via the families or via just the people that came, the sheer amount of people that came out to support the families. So I would say that has been what's been most present and something that I will take away most. And then secondly, I mean, just the complexity of this case. There are so many names and ideas and years in the making that have brought us to this point, and that was something that was really present throughout the 18 days of testimony that we heard, and it was something that I certainly will take away. And then finally, I mean, I will say, for the most part, I think exhaustion is the word.
Yeah.
Not only for the people, the reporters
Thank
that
you,
were
Kayla.
there,
God bless
but
you guys.
also for those families, and
It is.
something that they have been exasperated waiting on every single day. I remember the first day that the trial started.
Oh, thank you, Jamie.
I counted the amount of days that it had been since February 13th of 2017, and it was insurmountable. So certainly that is at the forefront of my mind and of many others.
What about
just to
go ahead,
add
Cody.
to that total now? It's been 2,800.
The jury interact, and honestly, I mean, the jury was able to ask questions throughout the trial, and so those were some of the most fascinating points where.
Yeah, and the jury again. The jury. That's where I had a good feeling. The jury, a lot of those questions, especially those first 2 weeks, and even on when defense, I still feel like there were some questions that were clearly pointing at that. Whoever's asking those was clearly leaning towards, guilty. Obviously, I'm sure, he's just taking it all in. But yeah, those questions were really revealing. And then for them to come in on Saturday and match, try to match the voice, that's what I would like to hear. And one thing that maybe some people don't know is Kathy Allen. And again, I'm not trying to blame her, but it was very interesting. For those that remember, when Richard Allen was arrested, you know what she deleted first? Her whole, because Richard Allen really didn't have a Facebook page. It was his wife that had, videos of him and stuff. Even the one where he's wearing the blue Carhartt jacket. And shortly after that, after his arrest, and these videos were obviously getting, shared online, she took down all the 2017 posts, And then eventually, I think, she privated the account, of course. But I thought that was very, very telling.
They would ask 15 questions for one person that testified, and then 4 questions for another person that testified. And,
thank you, Marion. You are the best.
Indication
all
to
of you
me
guys.
As a reporter,
God bless you, Marion.
as to kind of where they were headed. A lot of days it was, wow, they have an increasing amount of doubt here. And then in the other days, I watched specifically 2 of the men, one of them that ended up becoming that 4-person here for the jury. He seemed completely convinced as he listened to the defense testimony and shaked his head.
So he was the 4-person. So the guy. So for those that don't know, and I'm maybe we'll do one more show. Just maybe tomorrow or something. I'll have to put some highlights together, want some more information. But I was really trying to get some information over the weekend with the jurors, for those people that are there, and of course it depends on who you're, obviously there's going to be biased on, because I remember when I listened to the defense side, some channels, it was like, oh yeah, most of them, I could tell they felt he was innocent, maybe one or two, but then when I'd hear, like Murder Sheet, I feel like, again, I've always said this, I feel like, they give credit where credit's due, but I always kind of felt like there was a certain juror that was like taking the most notes. I think an older gentleman, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong in chat, knows better. But yeah, I think he was one of the biggest note takers. And so she's talking about him right here.
Yes, certainly. I mean, that was one of the most fascinating parts of this experience, at least for me personally, was watching the jury interact. And honestly, I mean, the jury was able to ask questions throughout the trial. And so those were some of the most fascinating points, where they would ask 15 questions for one person that testified and then 4 questions for another person that testified. And, that certainly gave an indication to me as a reporter as to kind of where they were headed. A lot of days it was,
Thank you,
wow,
Valerie.
They have an increasing amount of doubt here. And then in the other days, I watched as specifically 2 of the men, one of them that ended up becoming that 4-person here for the jury, he seemed completely convinced as he listened to the defense testimony and shaked his head.
That's what I heard.
And so that was one of the most fascinating parts there, was that they could ask questions, and also they weren't really shy with their interaction. They knew that we were watching them.
Right.
And so to see that kind of ebb and flow throughout this month, yeah.
What about the jury's interaction with the judge? Was there ever a point where the judge, because you mentioned they were asking questions, was there ever a point
I
where
would
the judge
too.
said, nope,
I would love.
can't ask that? What was that?
Because he is, I'm sorry to say, but he is the monster. That's the jury. You got to respect the jury. They believed he is the killer. A lot of us that covered the case for a long time, we've looked at so many people, and then when Richard Allen came along, I mean, he literally just, everything he said, I mean, you take about 80 to 90% of what he says is what happened. He just thought maybe he could change his timeline, which again, if you guys have seen, I played that video and showed how that's not possible.
Interaction like.
So for the most part, one thing that I noted every single morning in my notes is that Judge Gull would get up. She would put seemed to indicate that she likely thought that gag order would be lifted. So that's something that I am surprised to hear. But of course, we're awaiting that sentencing. That will be December 20th.
What about the gag order? Hold on. Let me go back on that.
Say anything right now until the judge lifts this gag order. So I want to go back to you, Kyla. We were sorry to cut you off there. Are you surprised?
Oh, so the gag order would be released. So I'm assuming people will go after the FOIA request, because I would love to see those interviews, the phone calls, and whatever else they, deemed. Obviously, certain things like crime scene photos and stuff, even though sadly there's just terrible people that, and you could tell, in my opinion, for those that don't know about the leak, it came from the defense. Now, you could say, their narrative is that, they trusted a guy. They had the photos out of the crime scene with the girls. And then one of their friends who kind of had worked with them off and on as like an investigator came in when they didn't know. Like, apparently he didn't lock the office. And he took these pictures and then he started sending them everywhere. And they ended up on the internet. They really did. And so, and the reason I think they did that is this is right after the whole Odinist thing came out. They put out this Frank's memo, got everybody worked up, because obviously it tells details that we never knew, about how the girls were found, and then the stick thing, and then they, the whole Odinist thing. And, there's just no substance.
She has not lifted the.
For those that don't understand, those sticks really what he's doing. There's one common thing with both girls you'll notice is one of the sticks, both of them are covering their main wound. And that's what they call an undoing, is that the killer has now hit regret or whatever, I don't know, and it's something that people have done before,
Gag order.
Oh yeah, I came across them.
I spoke
Oh,
to the
so
families
mad.
before. Becky Patty seemed to indicate that she likely thought that gag order would be lifted. So that's something that I am surprised to hear. But of course, we're awaiting that sentencing. That will be December 20th at 9 a.m. And that may take 2 days.
December 20th.
And so they've kind of indicated that will be both Friday and Saturday of that time frame. Perhaps she's waiting closer to
December
then.
20th.
Perhaps not. Of course, we've spoken many times about how the defense has really been working here to set up for an appeal. So there are many factors that could have led to her to that decision.
Okay, Kyla, thank you so much. Very good job. Let's bring Mario back in. Mario, is Mario still with us?
Where's Mario?
Okay, so Mario,
Where's Mario?
Are you surprised that she did not lift that gag order?
I'm not surprised. I think that she was concerned that this is going to be a circus. She wants to at least get this sentencing done with and be respectful to the family, and also make sure that all the proper procedures are concluded.
I agree and I disagree, but hey, it led to the guilty verdict. I'm happy with it. Again, I think most people would probably agree on either side that, we're not big fans of Judge Gold, but I think she's a necessary evil. Of course, I believe in transparency, but, I definitely have issues with, the transparency of stuff.
The main thing now is for both the defense and for the prosecution to get their witnesses, and the state and the defense are done with the 12 jurors. The only person that matters now is the judge in rendering this sentence. And so they want to make sure that they are picking the right people that they think that will impact the judge in showing that there's either more aggravators or more mitigators.
Yeah, that's a good question, Betsy. I heard something like 40 some odd years, but I don't know if that's for all of them or if that's I know that's for one of the big charges. So I don't know if there's 240 counts stacked on. Either way, it sounds like he'll get, even though it's not a death sentence, he'll spend the rest of the time where he should be. And for those that feel bad that maybe he got, whatever they allegedly did at the court or in the prison, keep in mind, this guy got to live for 5.5 years. So I don't feel bad one bit that he got to spend, time in a place that probably isn't unpleasant, because you know what? If you're accused, even though you're not guilty at that point, if you're accused, obviously they got to take you off the streets because you might reoffend. They don't know that. They can't take that risk. I don't think anybody here who's a parent, if he's a potential, even though he hasn't been, at that time, deemed guilty, still they got to take him off the streets. But then they were worried that he might take his life or somebody might do it, and they wouldn't be able to keep an eye on him
when rendering a sentence.
I have 1.5 minutes left, Mario, and then I'll let you go. I wanted to ask you this before, and then some news.
Let me just play Court TV for a second. Just curious.
That's kind of the problem with this case.
I'm going to be blatantly obvious. I don't hate Bob Motta, okay? But there's some things, for those that really have known this case, and some things, there was a group called the... Oh, God, let me know in chat if you know the group I'm talking about. I can't think of the name. Anyway, mainly it was these girls that kind of ran it, along with Winnicky and stuff. And, and they just had this... I think it was a Discord. I could be wrong. But these people would just say some of the most terrible things. And really it was on those girls and whoever else was in there But Bob Motta was a part of that group and commented a lot. And there's some comments where, they said some really terrible things, and he kind of like agreed. Again, I don't want to take anything out of context, but from what I heard, it wasn't good. And again, as a person who has worked with victims' families, you don't know how bad that enrages me. When people talk about these families like this. It's disgusting. Again, I'm not saying he directly quoted some things, but he kind of also was in this group, and it was really there's if you want to know more about it, there's a Murder Sheet podcast. I think they do 3 episodes on it. It's terrible. I mean, it's disturbing. Very disturbing. And yeah, so again, I know there might be some Bob Motta people that like him. That's fine. I've lost respect from the things that I've heard.
Just the way that the procedural posture was handled.
And one more thing, and I'm going to listen to his interview. I don't know about you guys, but when I listened to his interviews and the way he talked in the last few weeks, I got the feeling he knew Richard Allen was guilty. Again, that's my opinion on what I believe happened. Oh, look, they got Gray Hughes in there. Well, Gray Hughes was complaining because, they're all pro-defense.
And from my perspective, unnecessarily. The man who's been convicted called the tip line right after they released the still image of Bridge Guy. He calls the tip line and says he's there. Yet, for whatever reason, in the highest profile case ever, that for whatever reason is unsolved for 5 years, there's no follow-up.
Yeah.
There's no follow-up on the man who said he was there. To this day, I don't understand that.
And I don't blame him for saying that. I think we all agreed, like, this would have been over in a week. This would have been over in a week if Dan Doolin. So if we were going to railroad Richard Allen, wouldn't we have done that there? Like right there? Again, the whole railroading thing, it loses its whole thing when you're talking about 5.5 years later where they've looked at all these suspects. And, it's not like they kept just going back to Richard Allen because Richard Allen just kind of snuck under the cracks. But they looked at all these people. And yeah, his story fit.
And it was that choice made by whoever, or that mistake made by whoever, that took a case that could have very easily been solved to this mystery that also, I've got to think, struck fear into every parent in Indiana, thinking, will this killer take my kids next?
Right. Oh, well, there was a killer loose in Delphi for 5 years. And it turns out it was Richard Allen, the guy working at the CVS behind the counter. And that, according to the jury in this verdict today, but you're right, it would have changed everything had they followed up, had they interviewed him, because that likely would have triggered more of an investigation, and they could have easily, one would think, have solved the case.
But why those 2 girls lost their lives, he got to live for 5.5 years, so people want to feel bad that he allegedly spent time in solitary, which was really, he was a safekeeper, even though it's still not unheard of. And that argument I can understand, but still, when you really break down his confessions, there's times that maybe could have been in psychosis, but in the beginning he wasn't. And even in Wabash, they didn't really bring up the Wabash stuff. He was confessing well after he got better. And again, Chris Watts, one confession. And again, that's considered direct evidence. DNA, you'll be surprised. Another thing I learned, DNA is commonly only used in, like, I think less than 10% cases. Now, I think that might just be because maybe that statistic was based on a lot of crimes that may not have, I don't know. There might have been a lot of variables. But yeah, if you Google it, just look at how much DNA is actually used in a court case. It's very low. And it also means, and one thing I thought was very interesting, I listened to an interview shout out to Duty Ron. The other guy, I can't think of his name. He made a great point. He's very, he's very knowledgeable about DNA and some ballistic reports. And the one thing he said is, just because they didn't technically find DNA doesn't mean it wasn't there. Because remember, they only swabbed certain parts of Libby and Abby's body. And then remember, all the clothes from Abby and Libby were found in the water, which obviously would have diluted all that DNA. And so there could have been Alan's DNA there, but because it's outside in the forest, that is more likely to be against having DNA there because it can be easily,
one thing that I
contaminated because of the elements or whatever.
Is really sticking with me, Vinny, on this one too, is the decision.
Stacy says, I'm so glad Libby and their family received justice today. Yeah, I want to see if they're going to do an interview because I know they wanted to talk. Because for those who don't know, the family had a gag order on them this entire time. I think up until after the closing arguments were done, I think the gag lease, once the jury could deliberate, their gag was, now gone. So I would love to hear from them. Bless you, Stacy.
After the Indiana legislature opened up the state for cameras in the courtroom, the decision by this judge to hold this basically not just without cameras, but the arbitrary rules, no computers, no this, no that, even down to the last day where Richard Allen's family wasn't there yet with one of the attorneys, and she scolds them in open court, then grabs the verdict and reads it off. It just, to me, is a disservice because what you have now is people that were invested in this case from day one.
Wait,
for these little girls.
What do you say she did? What?
Into every parent in Indiana, thinking, will this killer take my kids next?
Right.
Oh, well, there was a killer loose in Delphi for 5 years. And it turns out it was Richard Allen, the guy working at the CVS behind the counter. And that, according to the jury.
God. Please don't say behind the counter. Oh, that's so terrible. These guys still think he's a pharmacist tech. Oh, these people.
This verdict today, but you're right, it would have changed everything had they followed up, had they interviewed him, because that likely would have triggered more of an investigation, and they could have easily, one would think, have solved the case. The one thing that is really sticking with me, Vinny, on this one too, is the decision after the Indiana legislature opened up the state for cameras in the courtroom, the decision by this judge to hold this basically not just without cameras, but the arbitrary rules, no computers, no this, no that, even down to the last day where Richard Allen's family wasn't there yet with one of the attorneys, and she scolds them in open court, then grabs the verdict and reads it off. It just, to me, is a disservice because what you have now is people that were invested in this case from day one for these little girls, and in caring for those two little girls, they were not able to watch the system. And what's the problem with that? Well, I'll tell you what the problem is, that there's tons of people that right now think that there was a disservice, that Richard Allen was not guilty and he got a horrible trial, he was treated poorly, and guess why? Because they didn't get to see it. And you cannot make an argument to me that would hold water that this was a good choice, because guess who's also paying for it? Greg talked about earlier, the families. There's even hate now going towards these poor families who have been doing.
Oh yeah, and that's so disgusting. I hate to see that. Yeah, anybody know? Let me in chat know if somebody can watch. Oh, are they live again? No. I would like to see if they're going to do an interview, because I would think they would maybe.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody.
Maybe do an interview now, or here we go. Let me go to this one.
Anything that was found in Richard Allen's home, and so maybe there were times where the jury was wondering, is this man innocent or
environment that they went missing and then that they had been so brutally murdered. That's why this has gotten so much attention, not only in this state, in this country, but around the world. People following this case.
Yeah, I mean,
and talk again with Anne Marie Tiernan and Emily Longnecker.
Yeah, I want to know what happened in the courtroom.
Scott, I'm also here with Bob Siegel, who was in the courtroom when that verdict was read. We were talking about the family, the defense team. I mean, what were their movements as they were coming in, waiting to determine what was the panel's decision?
Yeah, it was about a half an hour from the time that that the media was invited into the courtroom. Richard Allen was already in the courtroom at the time, so was the entire prosecution team.
Oh.
Andrew Baldwin was there with his hand on the shoulder of Richard Allen, trying to comfort him. The families were there of Abby and Libby. It was not until after the judge came back into the courtroom that we saw Richard Allen's family come in. And actually, Judge Gall was pretty frustrated. She wanted everybody right there. And she said, all right, we're back on the record. Where is Mr. Rosie? Andrew Baldwin said he's downstairs with the family. She said, let's get him up here right
let's go
away. And as soon as they came into the courtroom, that's when the jury was asked to come in. And again, it was so fast. Literally.
It did feel fast. Like, I thought, because usually it's like, they got to read it out, all this.
I don't think the jury was actually in the courtroom for more than 3 minutes total.
Wow.
And the judge immediately, as soon as the jury was seated, do you have a verdict?
Count one.
Foreman said yes. All right, we're going to read this. Count 1, guilty. Count 2, guilty. 3, 4, guilty.
Oh, my God.
Polled all the jurors to make sure that was, in fact, their verdict. She said, thank you very much. The jury was excused. And again, 3 minutes, it was extremely fast.
And now, presumably traveling, getting their items from where they've been sequestered at a hotel and moving back home to Allen County after having nearly a month-long of service.
Hey, Rennie, good to see you, sweetheart.
Trial.
Yeah. And Emily, from being in there almost every day as well.
Yeah.
That usually while we're waiting for things to kind of get going, there's a lot of talking and chit-chat in the courtroom. Today,
not to name it.
There was not a single word that was uttered. The families, the attorneys, the reporters, the 30 minutes leading up to, during, and after. It was not until the judge left, but there you could hear a pin drop in that courtroom.
I felt like you could hear a pin drop the day of those closing arguments. When those closing arguments ended and the state had that rebuttal, talking about, think of this, Libby had told her grandmother that one day she wanted to grow up and help police solve crimes, and she did that this time.
God bless her.
She brought her friend Abby to help her. And I remember that afternoon, it was...
And I have a theory. There's something that hit me I want to share with you guys here in just a minute, but I have a theory on maybe the phone and what happened, because obviously we don't know the exact details, but I do have a theory. Remind me, I want to share this with you. I just have one interesting thought about what could have happened with that phone, where actually it's not, obviously both girls were heroes, but I think Abby played a bigger part than we may ever really know. And I want to share that with you guys.
Very, very silent. Usually people would leave the courtroom kind of talking, and no one had anything to say that day either.
Please
so
remind me. I'll tell you guys. I think it's very interesting.
Today, I can see where no one would. Just
December 20th, Kayla.
Happened, right?
Very, very solemn.
So just a little over a month.
The verdict was read.
God, that's just before Christmas.
First, if they wanted to. Immediately, defense attorney Jennifer Auger went over to the Allen family. I saw Kathy Allen's head buried in Miss Auger's shoulder as she was crying and the family was crying. They were trying to comfort the Allen family. And on the other side of the aisle, on the other side of the courtroom, obviously much different emotions. It was a moment, I think, perhaps one of the first moments of celebration that you could see relief and celebration on the faces.
Oh, thank you so much,
Abby and
Jocelyn.
Libby's
God
family.
bless
And
you.
don't get me wrong here. I mean, it has been hard for these families to find anything to celebrate after this
Good to
horrific
see you,
ordeal
Cecil.
that started 7.5 years ago. But this was the verdict. This was the day. This was the moment. These were the words they were waiting to hear. And today, those words came.
You know, that family, both of those families, I mean, they, over the years have done things to try and honor the girls. They built that beautiful softball park.
It's more than that, Angela. Keep in mind, like I said earlier, if you missed it, Angela, DNA is actually, surprisingly, it's considered circumstantial evidence, whereas confessions are considered direct evidence. Now, maybe they could argue some of those, but when you've got over 60 confessions, and we're spanning almost a year, not a year, but pretty, well, April, and then I think there was one in April. Yeah, I think spanning a year, basically. I have them all, most of them. I'm trying to get them all in chronological order and have some notes with them, but there's ones in the beginning before he got on his meds where he admitted to her. And then there's ones where he got better and then he admitted again. And then the ones that I don't think the jury really got to hear, because remember, I don't think we heard all 61 confessions. I think we maybe heard like 3/4 or, 2/3 of them.
Both the girls love to play softball.
And the timeline, in my opinion, Angela,
up there. They've held food drives every year at the holidays to come and donate food in the girls' memories. So they have done what they could to
God bless you, Cunningham. Hope you're doing well, sweetie.
In the best way they could, under very difficult circumstances. Not, all those years not knowing, not having a suspect, then a break in the case, but then waiting for the trial. And so, again, here.
And that's another argument that people say, well, why shouldn't he have a record? But obviously, we don't know Richard Allen. Like, what do we really know about Richard Allen? When it really comes down to it, what do we know? Like, you would think the defense, in my opinion, if I was on that jury, like, I want to know, like, who is this guy? Like, you guys are, prosecution is saying he's the killer. What kind of guy this is? But they never did it in the opening statements. They didn't do it in the closing, and then they didn't bring up Kathy Allen. I mean, if you're innocent and you'd think Kathy would have taken the stand to, say, hey, he was fine before I saw him that day or that morning before I left to go to work or whatever. And then whenever he got back later that night, what was he like? What was he like days after? Did his depression all of a sudden take a huge turn? Many questions that, again, raise red flags to me.
We keep saying it. Today is the day.
Well, I think it is interesting that you bring up that park, because we did go out and visit that park really on the first day of the trial here. And
I think it would be split because, bringing the jury to the crime scene, one of the logistics to actually bring them down to the actual crime scene, I think, could be, that's tough. The bridge thing, I think it would have been twofold. I think the prosecution would have severely benefited if the juries actually saw, as I've always said, it's a linear path. We're on a trail. We're not going across town, a bunch of different things going on. You get them to that bridge, and that's all that matters. Because Libby does the rest. But yeah, I'm going to play this just a little bit more, and I'm going to show you guys something that I had an interesting idea about what Libby and Abby could have done to protect that phone.
You really do get a sense of how many people came together to contribute time and resources to create this 25-acre facility, an amphitheater, and bricks with personal messages to the girls from the families, people saying prayers.
I know.
Pictures there. the day that we were there happened to be a day very similar to today, perhaps less windy, but young families out there.
And then you get people that just aren't thinking and retweet those people, thinking that they're trying to retweet it to get people, to take it down. But what you do is you retweet it, and now you got two sources of those photos, and they're all over the place now. When I kept refreshing on, I think sadly I came across the photos on Saturday or something like that. I was so sick to my stomach.
On the swings, on the slides, having a place to come together. And it was pointed out to me that, once that we've built this park in their honor, the work continues. I mean, there's still maintenance, and we still need to go out there, and that has in a way been some healing for the people that have donated their time and resources, that when they go out there and they help clean it up and help maintain that park, that they are honoring Abby and Libby and making sure that there is a place that represents their love of music, their love of nature, etc.
Those girls, they would be 20 now. They would be 20, likely in college, young adult women, getting ready to live their lives. And so they're over the years talking with the family.
Or was it something else? Because there were other pieces of evidence, Katie, along the way that the state brought up and that the defense brought up that made everybody kind of wonder, is this the guy? Because remember,
I can't talk about it.
Oh wait,
all right.
What did they say?
To say, and then we're going to go to Bob and Emily for a little bit more context about what they can't talk about, but there are some things that they can. So here's Captain Galvez first.
Okay.
Judge Gall has not lifted the gag order, so we're not going to be able to make any type of public statement at this point. We'll be looking forward to having something scheduled a month from now following sentencing.
So maybe the gag order will be lifted after the sentencing?
That we're going to be able to say at this time. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I can't talk about it.
Oh, she's like, no, don't. Shh. Oh,
all right,
we're live.
So pretty tight lit there from state police. And we're just having this discussion of what can they and can they not talk about? Because we have seen, let's talk about the family, that they have gone on social media and they have made comments, not specifically about the evidence, not specifically about what's going on in court, but about...
No, with the family, this is before the gag order came up.
About perhaps their feelings and their sense of loss or their sense of hope. And so we've been hearing tidbits like that, but so it's this interpretation of what can I say, what can I not say.
Thank you, Stacey Foster. God bless you.
Right. Well, and keep in mind that the purpose of a gag order is because you don't want to be influencing potential jurors. When you have a jury pool and you don't know who's going to be sitting on it, it's to be preventing word from getting to a jury about, what that might influence them one way or another. I'll be honest, right now, the sentencing is completely in the hands of Judge Gall. And if there's one thing that we know about Judge Gall, she's not easily influenced by public opinion at all. So I'll be honest, I am surprised.
So with the death table, because I think Indiana has the death penalty, but I think, sorry. I think if they would have obviously followed up on the tip originally, I think Dan Doolin has a little, I don't want to blame him, but I think he could have. Nowadays, if you look at Stephen Stearns, there was a moment where, and I think this is now something that's, taught to these detectives and officers that are, looking into persons of interest or just, the witnesses that could be a person of interest. And the moment where Stephen Stearns was basically, you could tell he was caught, is the lady, she was interviewing him, she's like, and he has his phone, and she's like, hey, can I see your phone? Can you unlock it? And anyway, this is the Madeline Soto case. This is Stephen Stearns, the monster that took her life and, did stuff to her for many years. Absolute monster. But it was so brilliant. This detective, I believe it's a detective, she's like, hey, can I see your phone? And remember, just before this, the day before maybe, he erased his phone. He said, oh, I'm trying to factory reset it. And he said he somehow deleted all of his stuff. And anyway, so she's like, hey, can I see your phone? So she goes to his Google history and notice, there's no histories. There's no text messages, because obviously if you took her to school that day, there would be text messages between people. And she noticed all that stuff was gone. There was only stuff from like that day. And so and then I have a video that I did for that. And anyway, long story short, she then she gave the phone back to him, and then she took, because there was two of them, interviewing him. And so she kind of stepped aside, let the other guy interview him. And she clearly called her supervisor and said, hey, there's something wrong here. And anyway, then of course they were able to get his phone and, recover all the stuff that he allegedly deleted. Anyway, it's too bad Dan Doolin, it's too bad that he didn't have that training to do that. We'd be in a different position.
At this point, that
death penalty. Oh gosh, I got so off track. I'm so sorry, Bill. Yeah, so they have the death penalty, but I think because obviously the evidence isn't like it's a slam dunk case, that with the death penalty, you've got a lot more to prove, for these jurors to actually have, to be able to live with themselves, to actually, convict a person, to put them on death row. So I think they went the smart way.
Continue, because for the families, after all these years, to be able to have the right to finally say something. I can understand in some ways. There's going to be a time and a place and a day for law enforcement and the investigators, but to prevent the prosecutors, to prevent the defense attorneys, I don't see the point of continuing this gag order at this point.
I mean, and they've commented on social media before at different times, kind of esoterically, nothing right out. But so you have to, and we've been here kind of on lockdown the whole time. I haven't checked social media lately to see what's been tweeted about by, Kelsey.
Yeah, I don't get that.
Her sister has tweeted over the years. Becky
Once
Patton
it's a guilty verdict, like,
over the
why?
years, nothing, not very long statements or anything like that. Nothing that some would say would violate the gag order. But yeah,
I would imagine, like you both pointed out, there will be some acknowledgement of what happened today by the families, at least on social media. But, with the gag order in place, if Judge Gall says folks aren't supposed to be saying things, up to this point, everyone has been very tight-lipped as far as really sharing
I agree,
information
Miller.
related to the case.
And as journalists,
I would love to see those interrogation videos. Oh my God. I would love, because for those that may not have heard this, I think it's in the first one on October 13th. And, it's Richard and Kathy. Of course, I didn't actually see the video, so I can only hear on people that had seen it. But there's one point where obviously they start to, accuse Richard Allen. And, that's when they show the picture to Richard Allen. And he's like, well, if the girls took it, then that's not me. And if you guys don't understand why that is, obviously just that saying, it's like, if you were innocent, you'd be like, is this a picture of you? Be like, hell no, that's not me. Yeah. So let me play this. And then, like I said, I want to show you guys, I have a really interesting, it's just a theory, of course, on what may have happened with the phone.
Journalists, as reporters, you're in this position where you don't want to put anyone in a bad position to come up to them and ask them to talk. You want to
respect the
process.
You
want to respect the process. You want to be a responsible journalist. You don't want to insert yourself and be in someone's face when they're trying to obey a gag order.
You don't want to be asking them to violate a court order that's in place.
That's right.
So we would love to be able. You have to imagine all the emotions that these families and that these attorneys, keep in mind, the prosecution team, how hard they've been working on this case for years now, the defense team who believes in their hearts that Richard Allen is not guilty of these crimes.
I'll show you guys this thing here in just a second.
What they're thinking. But they just can't now.
It's
I'm still in shock.
Sam's been,
Are you guys still in
going
shock?
around the courthouse here, seeing people who felt like they did have something that they wanted to share, and she joins us now. Sam.
Well, Emily had just mentioned a second ago about checking social media because so many of the family members had been pretty active and vocal on social media. I did want to share with you Kelsey German, of course, the sister of Libby German. She hasn't shared her own words quite yet, but she did repost on X, formerly known as Twitter, and she shared a pretty lengthy post, but I want to read you just part of it. It says, guilty verdicts are a strange thing. It goes on to hear, it says, you hear the word guilty and a bunch of different emotions hit you. Relief, yes, but also sadness. And at the end, it shares a quote saying, when justice is done, it brings joy to the righteous and terror to the evildoers. Today, rejoice that justice has come to the murders of Abby Williams and Libby German. Again, Kelsey German, Libby's sister, resharing that post on social media. We do expect, despite the gag order, like we mentioned, some family members have shared basic thoughts, things they're allowed to share on social media. We certainly expect more of that could come in the days to come, guys.
Aww. Okay, I'm getting a couple of photos
from the family.
Thank
you, Sam, for looking
here.
that up. I really appreciate hearing that. Context, as we've been here, we haven't been able to be scrolling on social media, but boy, that whole post that Kelsey put up just shows how deep, how painful this whole process is.
And you know, she was the last person to see those girls alive. She is the one, Libby's older sister, that dropped them off at the Mears entrance that day, and she said her sister turned around and said, I love you, and those were the last words that she heard her sister say to her on that day, on that afternoon.
And again, that post just reiterates the fact that, you know, there are certain folks who will say this is a day for celebration. You know, it's a hard day, even for those who were hoping that the jury would come through with the verdict that they announced today. It's still a hard day.
It's a tough day, and it's not.
It is. Josh Posh, good to see you, buddy. Almost 2-year mobber. Yeah. As a matter of fact, one more month, you'll get the 24 next to your name there. Hey Jill, good to see you, sweetheart. God bless you all for the support. Squeaky Wheel says, I'm not in shock. I don't know how the verdict couldn't have been anything different. The guy confessed to anybody that would listen, right? Plus he knew about the white banded box cutter being the weapon. Yeah. I think the way the doctor said it, I think was not a good look, because it was like, oh, well, we heard about the confession about box cutter, and then of course, you know, he comes out shortly after thinking, oh, hey, it could be a box cutter. And I feel like he could have worded that differently, where it was like, you know, now hearing about the confession about the box cutter, I've always kind of had an issue on the wounds, and I could see a box cutter possibly being used, you know, something like that, you know, a little more just general, not where it's just like, oh, hey, by the way, you know, in my garage and there's a box cutter. It's like, oh, yeah. So I think that could have been done better, but oh, thank you so much, Linda. God bless you guys. Again, so I want to show you guys one thing that I just had a theory on that hit me, I think, last night. I'm like, God, this is kind of interesting to share with you guys, and we'll go for a bit. And then, of course, Sebastian Rogers, we're going to be going on Dylan rounds. And then I have updates with Aiden Clune. 2 of those cases I've been directly involved in. That's why working with family members, I cannot, because eventually I'm going to work with other family members, hopefully, to help search for their missing loved ones. And, you know, I got to respect what they believe in. And I stand by the Patties and, you know, the Williams. I don't know if it's Williams, but, you know, the other family. Thank you, Chris. Justice for Abby and Libby. God bless you, April. 32 months. My goodness, that is amazing. God bless you, April. Okay, I just want to show you something, and then we'll kind of see if there's some interviews and stuff. But let me just play. I just want to play one part where I thought there was something interesting. And for those that don't know, this is what I was doing 2 years ago. And the phone that you're looking at is actually the same phone that Abby Libby has. So, of course, I dressed up as BG, you know, and wearing all these different things because, you know, some people weren't sure if it was a fanny pack or if it was, you know, a hoodie underneath. And so I tried all these different hats and, you know, some people thought it could have been string hanging out. But the one thing I think was important was when I did the mustache to kind of replicate, could you see the mustache? And if that was Ron Logan, you would see that mustache. That you know, it wouldn't be clear, but you would have some kind of, I mean, look at this. Look at the graphics. For those that are on the phone, probably can't see it, but I thought this was huge for Ron Logan, because Control ++. So you can see how just disoriented, you know, it is, kind of like Bridge Guy. It's almost even worse, but look at what you see. That, you know, pixelations of the white mustache. I think that would have stuck out because he had a pretty, I mean, his mustache was very thick. It was big. He never shaved it in between the killings. So anyway, let me show you one thing, and then we'll get back to see if there's some stuff. Oh, wrong video. My bad. I'll get to chat here in just a second. Hope this one has the timeline. I think it does. But oh, and I lied. That one doesn't. Oh, I wanted to show you this. Becky Patty just posted this. Obviously, the Patties are associated with the Germans, and I'm assuming this is little Libby German. For those that don't know, she was doing sports like 11 months out of the year. I mean, she was doing softball, baseball, swimming. There's another one, but soccer. She was crazy. I mean, not crazy, but she was going nuts with all the sports. There it is. There's somebody's handwriting. Count 1, felony murder. Abby Williams, guilty. Liberty German, felony murder, guilty. Knowingly or intentionally killing Abby, the lesser sentences, both guilty. So amazing. Okay. I just want to show you one thing, guys, and I'll get to chat real quick here. So I was thinking about this with the phone, and I think that's possible that, let's see, what part? Oh, let me go right here. Okay, so I think what happened, of course, we know Bridge Guy comes up, and I can't wait to see that video. I mean, I don't, but I do for the voice and the enhanced version so I can match the voice. But I think, let me pause it right here. He was taking the girls and maybe was down in here. And I think he had him, in my opinion, I think he had him naked. But remember, Libby had her iPhone. So it's possible either she had her iPhone in the Delphi swimming shirt or in her jeans. And I wonder if maybe because obviously Libby was found naked, they were both derobed at some point. So, but I wonder if they were both derobed. And then, of course, the van comes, spooks Ellen. And so he gets them to rush, but for some reason, Abby gets in, Libby's clothes. And I wonder if that was on purpose because she was going to try to, get that phone to her, see if she could, maybe do something with it. Because, she was found in the jeans, and then the phone was found under Abby. So I wonder if there was some kind of situation that would happen just before they crossed the creek where, she made Libby or Abby put on her clothes because, that phone was in there. And maybe Libby knew that, maybe Alan had more interest in Libby, maybe, who knows. But I think it's an interesting concept that they may have tried to really protect that phone. Yeah. Because it's really interesting that Abby, Abby's the one that was found, the phone's found under her body. I really think there was some kind of, they're trying to get across, just before they get across the creek, sadly it must have been Libby had to cross naked, and Abby was wearing Libby's clothes, but I wonder if that was done by design, and, they were trying to keep that phone going. But sadly, that phone got wet because we know she was up to like her knees or whatever. And that phone could have gotten wet. And just to remind people with the whole headphone thing, remember, what's one of the biggest conductors? Water. And there's 2 pins inside your phone. There's 2 pins in there. Maybe at least in that phone, I don't know, maybe they change, do something, but there's 2 pins. And obviously, if you have a connect, if they contact, and water being a conductor would obviously set it into headphone mode. Anyway, I just want to show that. I have a few other things I'd like to share, but I would love to see some more stuff come out. Let's see what Court TV is saying. Are they finished? Oh, God. Ugh. That's it. This guy's gone. All right, let me get to chat.
Yeah, so let me go through the process. We learned that there was a verdict in this case, and then a few, I would say probably about 30 minutes later, after lining up and getting everything, I was sitting in the courtroom, and then we just waited a little bit longer for everybody to get in there. Once that happened, all the families arrived, everybody got seated, and then Judge Gull brought in that jury. The jury entered with what appeared to be their personal belongings, because they are now going to go back to Fort Wayne, where they lived and where were picked. After that, she said, asked, have you guys reached a verdict? Each of them, the foreman said yes, and then she read the verdict out loud. Guilty on count 1, which is felony murder. Guilty on count 2, felony murder. On the count 3 of murder, guilty, and count 4 of murder, guilty. Those felony murder charges are as a murder charge when a murder happens in the commission of a felony. In this case, it was kidnapping. The prosecution saying, and Richard Allen now convicted of kidnapping Abby Williams and Libby German back in 2017, and then murdering them and leaving their bodies along Deer Creek. As this happened, obviously a lot of emotion in that courtroom when that verdict was read from both sides, because remember, there are a lot of people affected by this decision. Of course, the Patties, Libby's family, affected by this and living with this for the past nearly 8 years. They, of course, became emotional. And I could see them all put their hands in their faces, begin to cry. I assume tears of joy, because this is the answer they have been waiting for, and this is the result that they have been waiting for, as I said, nearly 8 years. Of course, the other people affected by this is Richard Allen's family. They were sitting right in front of me. All of them, collapsed into their hands, their face into their hands as well, began to cry. That included Richard Allen's mother, as well as his sister was there, and his wife, Kathy. All of them clearly deeply disappointed by what has happened.
Yeah, and again, I feel bad, terribly bad for both families. I mean, we got 3 families involved in this, sadly, never going to be the same again. And, it's all because, I'm sorry, but, he's guilty. The jury found him guilty. He's a monster. Took 2 girls' lives. And, I know the Odinist stuff sounds great. conspiracy theories, they do well, but, they looked into that stuff, and it just didn't pan out. And I think a lot of people think, are being told different stories that aren't true about, they hear that, law enforcement, erased these videos. Of course, it was on accident. They had a new system. They didn't know this DVR was running all the time. So for anybody that doesn't know, the reason why these interviews were lost is they had a new system set up because they knew, obviously, there's a crime and we're going to have to be interviewing people. And they had this new DVR system. And what it was is, you have to turn it off and turn it on or something like that. Or turn it on and turn it off when you're done. Well, apparently, I guess they didn't turn it off. And it just kept recording and recording and recording. And then, eventually it has only so much memory. And then it ended up writing over those other interviews. And of course, again, it's still, it's not a good look. But, it's a rational explanation. Again, they messed up, but
the defense attorneys then asked
those people they looked at didn't there's no nexus is the big thing.
To poll the jury, and one by one we went through each juror. Judge Gall said, "Is this your verdict?" Each one of them said yes, one after another. 12 guilty votes for this guilty verdict. We then got into sentencing dates. Sentencing is going to be set for December 20th at 9 a.m. Just 5 days before Christmas is when Richard Allen is going to be sentenced in this crime. We do know that afterwards I witnessed as people were leaving, we saw the families hugging the prosecution, Abby and Libby's families hugging the prosecution team, hugging the investigators because they have, known each other and been in this together for so many years. And then, of course, I did see the defense attorneys come out from the well of the courtroom and hug the Allen family, and I heard Jennifer Auger, one of the defense attorneys, say it's not over. This isn't over yet, because we know not with absolute certainty, but it's a pretty good bet that this case is going to be appealed. Obviously, there's been so many issues over the past several years.
Of course, and that's the right, but. Let's skip forward here.
Say that, not say anything about the case, but say he is proud of his guys. So we unfortunately aren't going to be getting hearing from any of the players in this case until after sentencing, because that is when Judge Gall has kept the gag order in place until. But clearly there are a lot of happy people. There are a lot of upset people today on this, guys.
I don't understand. Is that not really? I understand up to the verdict, gag order, but. The sentencing, how is that going to, interfere or influence one side or the other? I don't know. Again, I'm not a lawyer. But yeah, Josh Saposh, thank you so much. I'm not sure what about the creepy guy in the parking lot, but thank you so much, Josh. You're amazing. God bless you. Yeah, I agree. That's what I said. That was one of the first things I said. I'm like, I think it's a good look. I felt good with the questions from the jury. I feel like there was a few at the end that kind of worried me. That might have came from, because I'm sure there's multiple questions from multiple jurors. But a lot of them in the beginning, especially the prosecution, even up into the opening, I felt like it was pretty obvious that, they had questions. April, thank you, Chris. Justice for Abby and Libby. I got you already. I'm sorry, but God bless you. Let me finish this while I'm getting a chat here.
Yeah, I can imagine there is a lot of relief among the family of both girls, although no verdict brings Abby Williams and Libby German back today. So that is something that we want to keep in mind.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt them, but yeah, that's kind of also what I was thinking. I'm like, I really feel like there was something that they were trying to do with that phone to preserve it. And maybe that's why Abby got in Libby's clothes for some god awful reason. But I again, that's just pure speculation.
Max, I know that you have been in the courtroom for this verdict, but I'm wondering if you could paint a picture for us of what it's like still outside of the courthouse. Are you still seeing gaggles of people? Are people still coming and going from the courthouse? What are you seeing from your vantage point?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Steve.
There are quite a few people still out here. I mean, there were huge crowds here on Friday, which was the first full day of jury deliberations. There were large crowds on Saturday, and then there were also large crowds today. As many people probably know, this case has drawn a huge amount of interest from across the nation, really across the world. There are outlets here from across this country and across the world here, media outlets that are here covering this case because of the interest that it has drawn. And it's also drawn a huge amount of following and interest on social media. So there have been people here, some through the duration of this entire trial, who have, followed this case so closely and have had such a vested interest in this case. So there are still a lot of those crowds here. Obviously, just a lot of members of the press who have been out here and have been covering this case, but still quite a huge presence, huge law enforcement presence here. There were a lot of police officers, sheriff's deputies in the courtroom when that verdict was read, and there have been just a lot throughout this entire trial. Obviously, there have been a heavier law enforcement presence over the past few days because this verdict could have come at any time, and it is, it is very divided. I think, as we've talked about, there are a lot of people who believe that Richard Allen is innocent, and there are a lot of people who believe Richard Allen is guilty. So there are two major camps there. Obviously, he is now guilty of the murders of Abby Williams and Libby German, but of course that is going to be, we believe, appealed at some point. But yeah, huge crowds still here.
Victims, Richard Allen's family, and certainly throughout the course of this trial, and not just this trial, but this entire legal process, there have been so many ups and downs and twists and turns throughout.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to go through them all, Dan.
So let me pause it there. Shay says, thank you, jury. I believe you got it right. They did. Obviously, we as the public, we didn't see the information, all the evidence. Again, I'm sure a lot of people, if they heard his voice and that video, even though it's 3 words, and of course, I believe they enhanced it a little bit. The guys apparently, because he's saying that where he's still, I don't know, like 50 feet away, maybe less or something like that. So the guys is, and then of course, they're still kind of up on the bridge where it's really windy. But when you hear down the hill, he is now obviously caught up to them. And you can even hear the crunching of the gravel as he says down the hill. And so I'm assuming they kind of also enhanced that a little bit. And again, you can't officially bring in an expert. So some people argued this. They're like, well, why didn't they bring in an expert for a voice comparison? Well, they can't officially do that unless there's so many words. I want to say it's like 20 words, which seems a little much, but that, again, and so, obviously they wouldn't be able to bring in an expert to say, hey, but they did say, have that Brian Harshman say, like, hey, you've heard the voices, who is that voice? And, he was the one to be able to point at Richard Allen. I think that's huge. Yeah, 54 yards away. I don't know. Maybe you're talking about something different. I mean, obviously it was a certain distance and always, cutting, getting closer. But yeah, the whole guys obviously was much further away. I also heard that the way Libby was recording it is that, so she was kind of recording it like this, right? Kind of down low. And Abby was in the view, so you couldn't really see Bridge Guy because he was kind of like behind her a bit away. And, they're talking and stuff, and he says, guys, and then, the whole exchange of that be a gun, and then, he's creeping me out, and then she jumps down, and at that point, I heard she strategically moved the phone so it was portrait, and then she went landscape, and that's when it caught BG for basically what we saw. It's just a few seconds, and I think she tilted it obviously to kind of maybe tilt it down so he didn't see that phone, which is brilliant. And then there could have been something where Abby and Libby were trying to preserve that phone, and that's maybe why Abby had her clothes on, because maybe they were gonna maybe try to do something while he might have been focused on one girl, and maybe he thought, well, while he's doing that, she could do the phone. That's kind of what I was thinking, with my theory on that. And again, shout out to Steve for the PayPal. God bless you. Thank you so much, Steve.
But yes, I mean, there was a sense at some points, at different points in this trial, that the prosecution was having a good day or the defense was having a good day. I would say it appeared towards the beginning, especially, that the prosecution was not having very good days. Their eyewitnesses were sort of falling apart and not very reliable and things like that. But as their case moved on and as we got closer to the end of them presenting their case, they did gain some momentum, especially with, I think a key piece of evidence in this. Obviously, we don't know what the deciding factor was for this jury, but the van portion of this, or those confessions that Richard Allen made in the Westville prison.
And this is what makes me mad, is once that van came out, boy, were the defense people not happy with that. Not happy. The defense themselves, that was a huge blow. And then all of a sudden, not all, but, there's certain creators that go out and now they're like, oh, Brad Weber, he's the guy, and it's like, okay, well, I thought it was Odinist. Now we're blaming Brad Weber. And then we're trying to blame Ron Logan. And it's like, how many people are we going to try to throw under the bus? Their whole argument is Richard Allen was was allegedly getting railroaded, but yet they want to railroad up to 7 people, 5 in this alleged Odinist group, which some of these people really don't know the others. It's crazy how they connected them. Anyway, I digress. Again, we're going to move on. Now, if the stuff gets released, which I'm assuming will be late December, maybe January, we'll get to see the evidence. And I think I really do think people will change their minds one way or another. Tom, God bless you. You may have lost a few viewers over your stance, but you've gained so many more by not compromising your integrity. Thanks, buddy. Again, yeah. I can't betray victims' families. Again, I have to believe in what they believe because I've worked with them, and obviously they didn't ask to be in this position. Wondering if the wonderful police officer who stated today is there today. Oh, yeah, I would love to see the interview with Doug Carter. I wonder if that won't come until after the gag order. I don't understand the gag order. It's done. Thank you, Angel. Good to see you, sweetheart. Yes, great day. So the death penalty, it really came down because the evidence, they had enough case. But because they weren't able to get him in the beginning, unfortunately, where there probably would have been more evidence found at his home, possibly in the car. And yeah, so unfortunately, I don't think they felt confident because when you have a death penalty case, obviously the stakes are much higher because now you've got to vote. That's a heavy burden for a jury to do, and I think that's where you need a lot of concrete evidence in this. Yeah, Nightbot's being a little weird. I'm sorry. Sometimes it happens. Yeah. Libby and Abby. Thank you, Rosie. Courtney says, Chris, a person outside the courthouse who knew Richard Allen saying she was relieved. Oh, is that the lady that worked with him, Courtney? Again, for those that are not as familiar with this case, ask yourselves, why didn't they bring up any character witnesses? I know I mentioned this so many times, but like, why didn't they, Kathy Allen, if this guy's innocent, like, what did he do that morning? What was he like after? What was he like days after? Again, we didn't get any of that. And then the people that have worked with him, especially women, there's at least 3 interviews with women, 2 from CVS and I think 1 from Walmart. And they all said he was a creep. Now, just being a creep doesn't mean, you're a monster. But again, the jury did their due diligence, and they say this is the guy. I know, and that's the thing, Courtney, is it really, I really had a bad feeling when channels like, not this one, I don't know, but the big one, Wish TV and the other channel, they would always have a defense person on. And I'm like, oh, what the hell? Like, where's, the only, a huge shout out to Nancy Grace and Susan Hendricks. God, I love her. She's so amazing. Can we get a shout out to those two, especially Susan? I know some people are not fans of Nancy, but God, Susan, she was on the panel last night with Tom and all them, and it was just so great to hear from her. I want to watch the part where everybody reacted real quick. Oh, wait. Oh, let's listen to this. This isn't over at all, says Richard Allen's wife after guilty verdict. I mean, you don't blame her.
What have you been able to learn?
Well, Anne-Marie and Emily, just a few moments ago when that verdict was read, the families of the 2 girls came out right here on the sidewalk underneath the flag. They hugged, they were crying, we saw smiling happen, even obviously a flood of emotions you have to imagine. And like we mentioned earlier, they had been staying in a business just across the street here for days now as this entire community waited for a verdict. I just saw Becky Patty, the grandmother of Libby German, who has been such a spokesperson. She's been at all the hearings for this case. She hugged a family member at that door. She was smiling. She was laughing. Just a moment ago, they walked inside, they gathered their items, and they left, which to me says we've waited, and again, that phrase, today is the day for them. That sign to me showed that, okay, we have waited as long as we could. We've got the verdict. Our job here is done. So Anne-Marie and Emily, of course, we expect more from families. It's important to note, like we mentioned, that gag order is still in place.
God,
so they won't
stupid.
talk to you necessarily, but you have to imagine those emotions will continue to come in the days to come. So we'll keep an eye on things here. We'll send it back to you for now.
That's a good question, Boogie.
All right, Samantha, I'll go ahead and take it back for now. We'll get out to Anne-Marie, Bob, and Emily, and yourself if you have any other new information that we can share on our...
I don't know if we heard that. I had a feel, at least my impression, I could be wrong, Lo. I had an impression because he's going to be sentenced on December 20th. I would think if the gag was going to be released, it might have been after the sentencing. I could be wrong. Do you know where I could find that, Lo 12? I'd be curious to know.
Our ongoing coverage of this verdict that has come in about 20 minutes ago in Delphi, that Richard Allen has been found guilty on all 4 counts, 2 counts of felony murder, 2 counts of murder in the deaths back in 2017 of these 2 young girls. Libby German was just 14 and Abby Williams was just 13. We always want to remind our viewers, this is always about these 2 young girls. It's about their families, the loss that they have suffered for the last 7.5 years. And while there is just
murder is where the state's theory is that a person committed some other felony, and during the course of committing that felony, the girls died. So in this
prosecution team, Andrew Baldwin was there with his hand on the shoulder. of Richard Allen trying to comfort him. The families were there of Abby and Libby. It was not until actually after the judge came back into the courtroom that we saw Richard Allen's family come in. And actually, Judge Gall was pretty frustrated. She wanted everybody right there.
Oh, okay.
And
Thank
she
you,
said,
Little 12.
all right, we're back on the record. Where is
Let's see
Mr.
if I can-
Rosie?
see if
Andrew
I can
Baldwin
find
said
that.
he's downstairs with the family. She said, come on, let's get him up here right away. And as soon as they came into the courtroom, that's when the jury was asked to come in. And again, it was so fast. Literally, I don't think the jury was actually in the courtroom for more than 3 minutes total.
That's so crazy.
And the judge immediately, as soon as the jury was seated, do you have a verdict?
Count one.
Foreman said yes. All right, we're going to read this. Count 1, guilty. Count 2, guilty. 3, 4, guilty, guilty. Polled all the jurors to make sure that was in fact their verdict. She said, thank you very much. The jury was excused. And again, 3 minutes, it was extremely fast.
And now, presumably traveling, getting their items from where they've been sequestered at a hotel and moving back home to Allen County after having nearly a month-long service for this trial.
Yeah, and Emily, you know from being in there almost every day as well, that usually while we're waiting for things to kind of get going, there's a lot of talking and chit-chat in the courtroom. Today,
Not today, but
there was not a single word that was uttered. The families, the attorneys, the reporters, the 30 minutes leading up to, during, and after, it was not until the judge left. But there, you could hear a pin drop in that courtroom.
I felt like you could hear a pin drop the day of those closing arguments. When those closing arguments ended and the state had that rebuttal talking about, think of this, Libby had told her grandmother that one day she wanted to grow up.
Yeah, so amazing. Oops, sorry. There's just a couple of things I want to go over. I did want to look at the reaction again, just because, again, I still think it's so surreal. Yeah, I agree. You know, again, I really don't have a huge issue with Andrea. You know, I get it. She's the defense. She's going to argue, you know. But I felt like she was, in my opinion, I felt it was really, really biased. I mean, I get it. She's a defense attorney. And I felt like, clearly, she's a smart girl. She's very smart. Vernacular is amazing. English was not my best. I love math. I was huge in math. But anyway, yeah, that was the issue. She's one of the biggest ones covering the case. So everybody coming in that wasn't as familiar with the case, that's why I kind of feel bad that, like, sadly, there was so much more that was pro-defense out there in the mainstream media. It was. It was only Nancy Grace that was actually, you know, like, you know, this guy's it. It makes sense. Hey, Carol, good to see you, sweetheart. Yeah, that's what it said. Yeah, I wanted to see.
So was the entire prosecution team. Andrew Baldwin was there with his, hand on the shoulder of Richard Allen, trying to comfort him.
Let me go to this part here.
Ended, and the state had that rebuttal at this time, and she brought her friend Abby to help her. And I remember that afternoon. I can see where no one would.
Yeah, Boucher went over to the Allen family. I saw Kathy Allen's head buried in Miss Auger's shoulder as she was crying and the family was crying. They were trying to comfort the Allen family. And on the other side of the aisle, on the other side of the courtroom, obviously much different emotions. It was a moment, I think, perhaps one of the first moments of celebration that you could see relief and celebration on the faces of Abby and Libby's family. And don't get me wrong here. I mean, it has been hard for these families to find anything to celebrate after this horrific ordeal that started 7.5 years ago. But this was the verdict, this was the day, this was the moment, these were the words they were waiting to hear, and today those words came.
Yeah. If we can't try not to too much about other channels, and I really don't want to poop on other channels. You got to ask yourself, as a defense attorney, you're going to get a biased opinion, Again, she's smart. I've listened to her. She is smart, but she's a defense attorney. She has an agenda. And that's it. I wanted to see people's reaction one more time. Let me see if I can find that video. Hold on. I really just want to see this one more time, where we heard the reaction. And then we'll go over a couple things, and then we'll get the chat. Marge and Carol. Oh, God bless you guys. I'll get to the chat here in just 1 second, guys. Oh, I know what I was doing. Okay. I have to make this wider. There we go. Oh, history. There we go. Okay, not that one, not that one, not that one. It's either this one or... I just wanted to play the part where everybody got the verdict. I wanted to play that part one more time.
You just need to take that first step.
Bloggers and then it looked like they kind of walked back to the line.
Okay, I think this is it. I just wanted to play this one more time, just because.
Yes, the people who were on the list, they made it into the courthouse. So now that plan had not been communicated.
Pretty sure this is the one.
That being said, personally, my anticipation is this would be a guilty verdict. Handled better.
Most emotional.
Present the best face of Richard Allen. Also, the prosecution now has that.
The verdict, and it's certainly
Where's the reaction at?
For the most part, they see
that we are focused on making sure.
Is like a 19th century Russian novel.
This is weird.
Piece of evidence, one particular storyline, narrative, timeline, if you will.
Phil, even if he's found not guilty, that doesn't mean he didn't do it, right? If he's found not guilty, that just means that the jury, with the evidence provided by the prosecution.
That's weird. I was just gonna try to find it just one more time, but maybe.
The verdict of that case involving the two murders, 17 deaths of Abby.
You guys all could have got
to one of these people that knew the families of these two girls tragically killed, Abby Williams and Libby German, near this bridge, as the police announced the arrest in 2020.
Anyway, let me get to chat here. God bless you guys. Again, just before I finish, I will talk about some stuff that's upcoming. There's some big stuff. So I'm glad this is kind of over. And again, Tom, that means the world to me. Again, I lost viewers because, to some people, like, I'm not going to watch you if you're saying he's guilty or whatever. I'm just presenting what my opinion is. And I've been researching this case for so long. Setzi says, "Merry Christmas in prison, you filthy animal." Thank you, Setzi, and thank you so much for all you do. So you think they didn't have agreed not to have a character witness for either side so they could focus on the evidence and not opinions? I agree, but to me, if I was on the jury, if you put yourself in the jury, and if this guy's allegedly innocent, well, the biggest person that knows Richard Allen is his wife. you would think, again, like I said, I mentioned it before multiple times. Why didn't she come up on the stage, on the stand and like, hey, my husband could have done this. He's a hard worker, great husband, great father, but we didn't hear that. I just feel like that would be a major red flag for me if I was on the jury. I think Idaho 4 is going to try to get a plea deal with all that evidence. I think the prosecution will not give him one. I don't know, Tom. I don't know if you heard. The defense has actually gotten some pretty good expert witnesses. But again, he's caught on camera leaving from his home all the way to the crime scene. Like, to me, he's toast. He's toast. Marge, thank you, Chris, for covering this case and your thoughts. God bless you. Carol says, Chris, hope you've been doing okay. Sorry I missed. I'm not sure what the word, it kind of connected. Sorry I missed all of you or something like that. No worries, Carol. God bless you. Agreed, Miss Doggover. I hope you're doing well. They did. It's an amazing day. Thank you guys so much. But again, at the end of the day, I agree with you, Tom, that they will. He's toast. Man, it's so weird. I had that video where, we heard them say, guilty and just kind of celebrate. And I just wanted to play that again, but I can't find that video. Because I know a lot of these people know the family, spoke with the family before this, and those poor people. So anyway, couple things. I might see if there's anything else, but let me take a sip here. My throat is dry. Again, and thank you to everybody spending the time in here. Again, we're gonna cover more cases. We always do. But if the evidence gets released, we're gonna be breaking down that stuff. So yeah, with Sebastian Rogers, so again, I had some in my contacts, and it's going down a really dark place, but it has some weight to it, and they believe that it's possible that Sebastian Rogers has been human trafficked, and he actually might be in either Oregon or Canada. They believe he might have actually been transferred into Canada. And this has happened to somebody before. And obviously it's happened to multiple people, but this particular group, and a guy has come forward to my source saying that he was trafficked and he got out. Anyway, it's wild. So I have to put this stuff together, but I think Wednesday I'll be able to have that. So probably Wednesday, my normal time, we'll go live and talk about that. Dylan Rounds, all the interviews and the video. If anybody hasn't seen the video for Dylan Rounds, the video where he's cleaning his gun and he's got Dylan's blood on him. It's the video where I was literally standing. It was, for those that don't know, this phone was in a pond for weeks. Eventually weeks, but we were going to jump into the pond and look for it. But we were told that it had already been searched, but I was standing like 5 feet from that thing, maybe 10 feet. But didn't know it was in there. And anyway, long story short, for those that don't know, Dylan Rounds, they were able to save it, recover it, and there was a video after he killed Dylan Rounds, this poor 19-year-old kid. The killer somehow took the phone, and as he kind of set it down, it hit record, but it's like a time lapse, so it's just photos, and it shows him cleaning the gun. He's got blood on him, and anyway, so all that stuff's released. But I have my experience with it because I know where they were allegedly looking for him, compared to where he was found. And it's wild. Yeah, Kimmy, I agree. And again, I don't really blame the people that, believe not guilty. I just don't think they have all the evidence, Again, it's just, we as the public need to, if you really feel differently, we need to see that. Sensei, you understand how much respect I have here for Chris and the mob crew and the mods. Respect to all of you. Oh, thank you so much, Jimmy. You guys are going to make me cry. I'm still, like, once I get off this, I am probably just going to be like, I don't believe it. It's crazy. Yeah, Boogie, I used to have people on. I need to set up a thing for it again. Yeah, you know who I'd love to have on? Well, there's tons, but I would love to have Susan Hendricks on. Oh my God, I love that girl. I'm in love. No, but she's so smart. And Tom Webster, of course. Who doesn't love Tom Webster? God, he's even doing like a separate cooking thing or something. Amazing guy. Oh, no, Squeaky. He was not. He was found southwest in the mountains, but not really in the mountains. It was right just at the beginning. And there's this road that's called Pilot Drive or something like that. And so we would pass the body, even though it was still like 300-400 yards out. We'd drive on that road all the time and had no idea we were passing his remains. It's sad. Yeah, again, I think one thing I think everybody could agree on both sides is Judge Gold, man. Not a big fan. Not a big fan. Yeah. Mizak, was actual evidence suppressed, or is that speculation from RA supporters? So you got to keep in mind, in any case, usually there's evidence that's suppressed, but that's on both sides. Even and then people say, of course, the pro defense say, oh, well, Judge Gull is, obviously pro, it's just there to help McClelland and his team. But the videos, the prosecution wanted them out. She said, nope, I'm letting them in. So there was a lot of stuff that Judge Gull did. Some of it kind of surprised me. I'm like, oh, damn. There's no way you can now say that Judge Gull is just biased and, all for the prosecution. She let in stuff that the defense or the prosecution didn't. And it happened both ways. I think that's just, part of the squirrel pond. Yeah. I'll put, yeah. I'll probably put that in the end of the video or something. Yeah. Again, that's the speculation. Again, but if you know the dog and if you kept up with his tweets, he said he got leads and said that they were going to, they had leads in Oregon and they believed he could be held in Canada. Again, that's just speculation. The reward went up too. I think it's what, 175,000, I think. So I think something could be happening. Yeah, I think it still might take some time, but oh my God. Oh yeah, Judge Gold. Like I was blown away. Like I almost felt it was more. She was more pro defense, but I think it was pretty even. Honestly, I wasn't there, so you know. But from what I heard, it's at the very least it was even. Yeah, Boogie. I don't know if that will happen. Unless they do it like where they're redacted, they're not, their voices or what their faces are covered or whatever. But yeah, I would love to know what was going on. I really feel it did come down to like there was a majority guilty and a few, because we did hear. I remember hearing that there was at least like one or two. I think maybe women. Nothing against women. It just I think was obviously most of them were women, but yeah, I think there was 2 jurors that that I heard of that maybe they had to kind of sway. Well, Stephanie, that means there was probably inside help. Again, it's speculation. But we're gonna look into it, and we're gonna try to do it responsibly. Because we don't know who, if that was true, who's actually all involved, but yeah, that's the thing. For those who are like, God, why didn't they bring in these third-party suspects? She told them, yeah, you can bring them in if there's a nexus. Nexus means there has to be some kind of evidence that supports that they were there. None of them. Their biggest guy, B.H. Holder, the claim, he's kind of like the main guy. He was at work, clocked in. He has an alibi. Richard Allen has no alibi. Elvis Fields. People say, oh, he spit on the girls, but that's all taken out of context. He asked the person when they swabbed him, and again, this is a guy that's got a mentality of like a child. And so in his mind, he's like, well, if you find my saliva on the girls, can I explain that? And then so they twisted that and said, oh, well, he spit on the girls. And it got all, taken out of context. And then, of course, because again, he's not mentally right. I think that kind of like messed him up. And then he allegedly told his sister that, he might have done it. And then that was it. One confession, but he wasn't even sure. And then it's like, okay, well, we don't want to convict the guy with 61 confessions, but, we want to convict this one guy with one confession that is mentally challenged. Like, it just, again, they're trying to they're claiming that they're throwing people under the bus, but what they're going to do is try to throw, like, all these other people under the bus, whatever fits their narrative at that time. Anyway, I don't want to get too off topic because there's just a lot of stuff. I'm sure we're all emotional on all sides. Again, at the end of the day, we have to respect the jury. They believe he's guilty. And the victims got justice. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that was a really good sign. When I heard about that on Saturday, I'm like, yeah, I think they were trying to sway a few jurors that were still kind of, maybe in the middle. Yep, Just Joe. Yeah, probably what we saw with the lights was him being abducted, obviously. But, yeah. Yes, it has. I'm not sure what you mean, Jessica. Which video are you talking about? I'm sorry. I would love to answer your question. Let me see if I can find one more video. God, I want to find the one where people heard like the reaction. Oh, here it is. Oh, here's the video. No, they're coming out though. Is it? Oh, she's got it.
She said you gave this to me. I don't have her to see.
Oh, it's Barbara McDonald. Oh, I heard one of the pro defense go, "Oh my God." Again, I don't want to. I'm not one of those persons like rub it in, you know. That's amazing. So look at that. That's Barbara McDonald coming out. She's got all the charges and what they said. So those are the 4 charges, and then guilty on the left. Well, that'd be right. That's amazing. That's amazing. It's just such a good feeling. And again, huge shout out to Hidden True Crime. Oh my God, what a great channel. Does anybody know? I think they might be based in Utah because that's where I live. If anybody knows, but I listened to Dr. John, which I believe is her husband. Correct me if I'm wrong. And oh my gosh, what great insight, because he works with sex SOs, you know, offenders, and I'm not sure his exact practice, but you know, he understands the psychosis and stuff, and he looked at all of them and he said, yeah, I could see some of them he might be in psychosis, but a lot of these he was malingering, and he was and then he has that dependent disorder, you know, where he's, and that inner confession where he's first telling his wife, you know, I did it. She says, shut up, you know, I did it. And she says, you can't talk like that. And then eventually says, you know, they're messing with you. And then he says, well, I think I did it. And it's because now she's starting to, you know, because he needs to depend on. Anyway, he explains it better. Oh my gosh. It was like, oh, this makes so much sense. So again, that's it. Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. Maybe one day I could maybe do a collab with them. That's amazing. Oh, is that what it is, Sensei? Yeah. It was such great insight to hear what, you know, his impression of it. Yeah. She was the only one out there really pro-prosecution with a big channel. God bless her. And I feel bad because there's people in chat like saying, well, I'm leaving now because, you know, and I feel bad. And it happened to me, but I'm not going to, again, I've worked with victims' families, and I can't betray them. And again, it just, everything fit. Richard Allen told the truth. So, all right, guys. Yeah, I think I'm going to finish up. I have to yeah, they are. If you do go in there, you know, please don't promote my channel or anything, but, you know, I'd love to say hi to them once. But yeah, God bless them. But yeah, if you go on that show, maybe if you want to say, you know, Chris from Mob Crew says thank you for all you did. Because, you know, there's all the defense people, Lawyer Lee, which I liked Lawyer Lee. I feel like she was still kind of more in the middle. Andrea, I'm sorry, she's smart, but it just, yeah, it didn't hit with me. Oh, thank you so much, Angela. Yeah, again, we'll come back to this maybe if there's some revelations, maybe tomorrow. But Wednesday, I want to do Sebastian Rogers if I can get all that stuff. It's pretty wild. And then Dylan Rounds as well. I want to get a video out. And then maybe do a members live to kind of show you guys. Because there's footage I have. I've been sitting on it for... It's 2002. So I've been sitting on it for almost 2.5 years. Where we were searching for him, and they would have never found him if they kept searching in that area. So if anybody else, let me just make sure nobody didn't send in their like PayPal or something. But if you did, PayPal or Venmo, God bless you. Thank you, Steve. And again, we're just here to help the missing. And again, this is just a case that I got involved in a long time ago. And to me, everything made sense with what they put forward. It's Squirrel Pond. Yep, that was a classic. Oh, did they, Boogie? Oh. See, I don't do too much chatting when I'm on other people's channels because I almost feel like if I'm in other people's channel and I'm sitting there chatting, I almost feel like I'm trying to promote myself, even though I'm just chatting and stuff. So, yeah. I like to just try to stay humble as much as I can. But I'm not perfect. I have flaws. There you go, Ruben. There you go. Right. I want to be able to sleep at night, you know. I don't want to feed my viewers false facts. I could not believe TNT, for those that know what I'm talking about, Truth and again, I'm not trying to attack her, but I just could not believe in her chat all these people saying, "Oh, well, it's a fake. This video's fake. This bridge guy video's fake." And it's like, okay, if this video's fake, why didn't the defense bring that up? Don't you think, you know? And then they're in their chat and they're saying, "Oh, there's no metadata. There's no metadata." And it's like they literally introduced metadata into the phone. And then there was another person saying that the picture, the Snapchat picture of Libby on the bridge, trying to find it here. Anyway, he said that was fake because it wasn't found in the phone. And this idiot didn't realize it's a Snapchat app. The photo, when you take the photo in Snapchat, it's through the app. And back then, the whole thing with Snapchat is you send photos, but then those disappear on your phone. They're not on your phone. The video was on the phone because it was taken from the video. It's taken from the iPhone itself. But when she Snapchatted Libby, it was just a Snapchat. It's not on her phone. That's how it worked back then. They've changed Snapchat over the years, but that's how it worked. But there was just so much stuff that they were saying. I'm like, oh my God, it's not true. Yeah, I've kind of turned away from panels. Not that I wouldn't like to collab again. But yeah, I love Lauren, her work. John's amazing. Susan Hendricks, Nancy Grace. I love Nancy Grace because she was so passionate about the Kaylee Anthony case. So passionate about it. And of course, we know what happened with that. Sadly. And I was saying earlier, I'm like, there's a lot of more channels, of course, more channels are popping up. And I see these ones that have like, you know, truth up in their screen up here, you know, like truth, we're telling the truth and transparency or whatever. And it's like, if you got to put that in there, you know, to me, it's red flags. Yeah, I agree. I agree, Squeaky. I mean, I don't want to attack her. Yeah. Again, we talked about that. It's a joke. Yeah, except Lawyer Lee, you know, she had that one guy that spent time in prison. I think even with Alex Murdaugh, and that was very interesting to hear what he went through, and it was. Sorry, I thought I read something. Let me
All
see.
right, we're going to ask John to step out because we're going to be joined right now by Bob Donaldson, who has arrived here in town. Of course, Bob, we all remember that day in 2017 when we first heard about this tragedy and we sent our first crews up here. And now it looks like this afternoon we've got a verdict.
Well, Russ, we do have some new information. We have reporters with CBS 4 and Fox 59 have talked with the families of Abby and Libby just a short time ago. They were very, very gracious. They did not want to talk publicly today. They're obviously relieved by this verdict, but they did want to say that today was not the day for them to step forward and to talk, that they wanted to gather their thoughts. So again, we have
it's
heard
very
some
emotional.
reaction from Abby and Libby's family, but they are not interested in talking publicly right now. But they were very gracious, and they were
nobody
willing,
did a press, Mighty Monster. Good to see you,
basically
sweetie.
say, we understand the interest. We know that people do want to talk and get our reaction, but they said today was not the day.
Can you imagine?
I understand
and maybe you can, because we've been talking to these families for 7.5 years.
Yeah, they've been waiting all this time. All that emotion built up, and then probably kind of knowing that there's all this pro-defense stuff, which, again, everybody's entitled to their opinions and thoughts. But again, the jury is the one that saw the evidence, and they did their due diligence, and yeah, we got to respect that
burden of not only living with this nightmare every day for 7.5 years, but having everybody from you, me, and every podcaster under the sun banging on their door, hitting their inbox, wanting to talk to them, and then having to tread a fine line between I appreciate your interest, but I don't know anything and I can't say too much.
Well, we all woke up today knowing there was going to be another day of deliberations, and our thoughts immediately go to the families of Abby and Libby.
Yeah, and I was at the doctor's, for those that missed it earlier, I was at the doctor's, and I'm like, I told myself, I'm like, I swear to God, they're going to come to a verdict either when I'm at the doctor's or when I have to go pick up my prescription, so it takes about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. And it was just as I got out and I went to the store, and because the store is just right by the doctor's office, and so he sends it electronically. So it usually takes, sometimes it'll take like 30 minutes, sometimes it take like an hour and a half about. And so as soon as I got to the parking lot, that's when they announced that they had a verdict. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, so now I'm sitting there waiting for my prescription. And anyway, I finally got notified, and then I had a 30 minute drive back, and I probably got back here in like 15 minutes, maybe 20, but man, got here just in time, really. I mean, I think they announced it 30 minutes after I went live, so but yeah, so updates again. So Sebastian Rogers is going to be doing Dylan Rounds, big stuff, a lot of stuff people haven't seen before. And Aiden Clune, they've been doing cadaver dog searches. So I'm trying to help the family because it's such a big area, but they did allegedly get one hit. They brought in a couple dogs, and they believe they got one possible hit. So I don't know if they're going to be able to bring dogs out because it's almost like winter time now, which is a bummer. But there's some good stuff. It's a good sign. Yeah, but that goes both ways, critical, But, again, at the end of the day, we got to respect the jury. I've been on a jury. I haven't been on a jury like this. Very simple domestic case that I was involved in. Pretty straightforward. And it only took 2 days. Of course, it was no murder or anything. It was just domestic violence, sadly. But, yeah, there's, they did their due diligence, and they took their time. I'm happy with it. I'm still in shock, really. Yeah. Yeah, blaming the people's fan. Yeah, that's just low. I'm sorry. Again, it's terrible. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you so much, Damien. You guys are gonna make me cry. Don't do it. Let me finish this interview and then we'll get out of here, guys.
This has been an ordeal for them, obviously now for almost 8 years, and so to go through another day of deliberations has got to be agonizing for them, and so you can imagine the sense of relief that they have today.
Well, I guess now that we've got a verdict, I can tell you about this conversation. I was talking with Mike Patty, Libby's grandfather, and this was during the trial, and it happened to be on Halloween morning. Well, Halloween that morning during testimony, during evidence, is when we heard those phone calls from Richard Allen from inside the prison to his wife Kathy, where he is confessing. And there were 7 phone calls, and in those phone calls you can hear Kathy Allen's heart breaking.
Sure.
Because perhaps she is just as, well, not as just as big a victim, but she's a family victim in this too, because she had no part in this. And you could hear her crying, and I said to Mike, I saw him outside, I said, look, I know it must grind you to hear her crying in those phone calls, because you guys have been crying for 7 years, but there's another family on the side of this who, didn't have anything to do with this, and their hearts are breaking too.
Well, Russ, you've been here for weeks now.
And the video that I really want to see is the interview on October 13. Sounds like there's a lot of interesting stuff, because towards the end, I believe, Kathy comes into the courtroom. Kathy comes into the interview room, and there's a little conversation where he's saying, like, I know that I wouldn't do that. You know that I know that you know that I know that you know. Something like that. And the one thing she said I think is very damning, I would love to hear, is she apparently said, "You did not tell me you were on the bridge." I think that's huge. Like, that's a huge red flag. Like, if you're innocent, that's, why wouldn't you just say, tell the truth? So, yeah, I thought that was very interesting. And then, of course, there's, when he gets asked, like, is this the picture of you? Well, if it was taken from the girl's phone, no. And if anybody doesn't understand that, before we finish, let me just show you something. For those that don't really understand this, what happened. Oh, I got to clean all this out. I see the bridge. What's this one? Delphi 2. Members only. Not this one. Oh, here we go. So, anybody doesn't know the backstory about this, I'll just tell you one thing. It's very interesting if you haven't heard this. So, make it bigger here. Let me take a sip. So, what happened is, obviously, sadly, February 13th happened. They find the bodies on February 14th. I think it's the 15th or 16th, I want to say. You can correct me if you know in the chat. One of those 2 days, they put out in a newsletter this photo, right? But they don't say he's a suspect, right? They don't say he's a suspect. They're just saying, hey, we're looking for this guy. And so it had no context to it. They didn't know it was from Libby's phone. And a lot of people thought, because out there was trail cams. There were trail cams, so I think some weren't working, and others are just in an area that obviously didn't capture anything or whatever. So he probably thought this was captured on trail cam. And so then he probably, and then of course he told his wife, but again, clearly he didn't tell his wife that he was on the bridge. He just told her he was there. So anyway, yeah. And then he came forward. and said, yeah, I was wearing this stuff. He told him he was wearing a blue Carhartt jacket, blue jeans, kind of covered up, something like that. And again, he didn't know this photo at the time was taken from Libby's camera. And again, it was very clever. And again, they could have nailed this guy from the beginning. And it's just too bad. They had it. I want to put hate on Dan Doolin, but unfortunately, hopefully, it's just learning lessons. And he should have followed up. And, who knows what would have happened. But, yeah, very interesting. And then, of course, in October 13th, they show him the same photo. And what's his quote? Well, if that was taken by the girls, that's not me. Because remember, he might have thought that could have been the trail cam. But who in the hell says that? It's ridiculous, in my opinion. I'd be like, hell no, that's not me. Yeah, I heard, that interaction, I heard there was some major red flags. And there were some things that they couldn't quite hear because, there's a little conversation to the side. I would love to know. I know. I love Doug. I can't talk today. Doug Carter. Yeah, I'd love to hear him. Everything he said in that press conference came true. Thank you, Laura. You guys are amazing. Oh, thank you so much. Richardson family, God bless you. Hope you're doing well. I do. I think we all do, those that have been just so invested in this. And then, there's a lot of negativity, and it's been hard because we believe in what we think, and then you have the others, and then, yeah, it's tough. It sucks because it's like, there's going to be other cases where we might all come together and agree, but it's like, you get these people in comments, like, I felt bad for Lauren, like, because she's kind of sticking her neck out for the prosecution when it's more all pro in the media. And so, when you kind of stick your neck out and you're kind of going more pro prosecution, I watched her chat, even though she's got a great support, there's people in there like, I can't believe you said this about you. I'm leaving, and that would be in there, throughout the chat. And I was just like, oh, it's terrible. Yeah. Thank you, Mina Monsters. And, that was awesome. You guys were out there searching, I think, for Riley Strain. That's amazing. Thank you, Angel Wings. Thank you, Carol. Yeah, and it sucks because I think there would probably been more people coming forward, but they were possibly afraid because they would get attacked if they're not in the majority of people, kind of like with the Freak Karen Reed thing, where it was obviously there was a divide, and yeah, it sucks. It really does. Yeah, I saw that D. There was one about 4 or 5 days ago, just before. I think it was after closing arguments. I watched, and oh man, there were some just really rude people. All right, guys. As much as I love you guys feeding my ego, God bless the families. Prayers for them. Finally, I mean, I guess today is the day, but I think, really the day will be is when he gets sentenced. So with that, I might go live tomorrow. I don't know. So the Dylan Rounds thing, I'm going to do a video on that, and I might premiere it so we can kind of watch it together. But like I said, I've got a lot of stuff that people have never seen. Some very interesting things that people may not have known. And all the videos are out there now. So I'm going to put them together and everything. It'll be very fascinating. So with that, guys, I am going to say God bless you. And if I'm not on tomorrow, I will definitely be on Wednesday. So hopefully I can get this video done Tuesday, and we'll have a premiere Tuesday. So, but for the mods, Wednesday for sure. Probably go back to the normal time. So, love you guys so much. Again, and a shout out to our veterans. Huge shout out to our veterans and the families of veterans that have had to go through all, this stuff and make our country, amazing. Protecting it. So with that, guys, I'm just gonna bounce out. We're gonna do new pet videos. I've got them, but I didn't get a chance to load them up into this, but I've got new pet pictures for the members and stuff, so we'll have that for Wednesday. And with that, God bless you guys, and we'll see you guys Wednesday.